Marvel, Reincarnation Paradise. Chapter 41. The plain battle ended, and under the guidance of the holy airship, the legions began to return to the fortress in an orderly manner. As a fortress army stationed at the foot of Black Mountain, they would conduct such a battle every once in a while, and they were already familiar with the process. Most of these battles were initiated by humans, on the one hand to curb the number of monsters in Montenegro, and on the other hand to train soldiers. This is not only a huge military station, but also a cruel training ground. However, the activity of monsters in recent years has led to increasingly frequent battles, almost to the level of once a month. This has increased the demand for the fortress's manpower. It is against this background that the contractors have entered the world. As the march continued, until the sky sank and the red glow disappeared, the legion arrived under the Black Mountain fortress. Su Yu, who was riding a war horse, was naturally among them. He was at the forefront of the army, looking at the huge military fortress in front of him. The Black Mountain fortress was established decades ago. It was the bridgehead for the Alliance army to resist the Black Dragon army. It was built by many races such as humans, elves, and dwarves. As the only defensive building on the continent that gathers the technical crystallization of all major races, it's unimaginably tall and majestic. The fortress is entirely ink black, and its building materials are locally sourced from obsidian, which is the most abundant near Montenegro. After being blessed with countless magic and divine spells, its walls can even withstand the Black Dragon's breath spray and remain intact. No damage. After decades of wind and rain erosion, it is still as clean as new. Su Yu didn't feel anything strange before he got close to the fortress, but after getting closer, he truly felt how majestic the entire fortress was. Standing at the base of the wall and looking upward, the two adjectives of thousands of feet tall standing on the wall and reaching the sky are vividly expressed by the entire city wall. It's spectacular. When I saw the Black Mountain fortress for the first time, I was so amazed that I couldn't speak. A knight drove his horse up to Su Yu, also keeping his head raised and looking up. His name was Bunir, Kairos's deputy and the second in command of the Glow Knights. In the previous charge, if Su Yu and Kairos were the forwards of the first echelon, then Bunir was the leader of the second echelon. No less cold and dull than Kairos, Bunir was much more cheerful and active. On the way back to the fortress, Su Yu learned a lot of information about the Black Mountain fortress and the situation on the mainland through him. After arriving near the fortress, seeing the two chatting happily, Kairos simply asked Bunir to act as Su Yu's tour guide, while he left first. As the leader of the knights, he needed the first time after the battle. Go and report the situation to Lord General Thorn. It is worth mentioning that this guy Bunir is not only good in strength, but also in excellent appearance. His face is handsome but not feminine, and his body is strong but not bloated. Coupled with his long pale golden hair and sea blue eyes, he is simply perfect knight template. At least compared to Kairos' iceberg face that has remained unchanged for thousands of years, Bunir's external image of always having a gentle smile is obviously more in line with the public's perception of knights, so the knight's external communication is basically based on him. Responsible. According to Su Yu's conservative estimate, this guy's charm attribute is definitely not less than 10 points. Let's go, it's time to enter the city. I will take you to visit the Black Mountain fortress later. The fortress will be very lively today. Lively. With doubts, Su Yu followed Bunir into the Black Mountain fortress. It's quite lively. After every victory in a battle, the fortress will hold an all-night celebration banquet to celebrate the victory. While explaining, Bunir led Su Yu through Wengcheng, the outermost part of the fortress, then to the tall gatehouse, and finally after traveling along the wide main road for a while, he came to a huge square. Although it was night, the square did not feel dark. 4 huge light balls were arranged in all directions, reflecting the square softly and brightly. The banquet hasn't started yet, and now it's time for the priests of the temple to perform large-scale healing spells on the injured soldiers. Look, over there. Su Yu looked in the direction of Bunir's finger and saw that a huge staff had been erected in the center of the square, as big as a giant pillar. Around the staff, many priests in white robes were busy working on something. The fine runes centered on the staff and began to expand outwards, eventually forming a huge magic circle. It's almost time, the healing is about to begin. Bunir's voice rang in his ears, and then the staff changed. A milky white glow bloomed from the highest point of the staff and spread. After a moment, the glow enveloped an area of about several hundred meters with the staff as the center, forming a huge light shield. The light was gentle but not dazzling, attracting the attention of everyone in the square. All the wounded should come in one by one, and the goddess will grant you healing. The speaker was a priest wearing a luxurious priest's robe. Different from the ordinary simple priest's robe, his robe was quite exquisite, edged with gold wire and embellished with gems. This is Lord Hubert, the temple priest. He is the highest-ranking cleric in the fortress and the leader of the priest team. Bunir looked at Priest Hubert, who was commanding the priests under the huge staff, with respect in his eyes, and gave him a strange courtesy from a distance. After listening to the introduction, Su Yu firmly remembered the name and face of this priest. In this world where there are all kinds of extraordinary powers, the title of temple priest sounds not simple. In the square, as Hubert's voice came out, many soldiers surrounded by the light mask began to enter the light mask in an orderly manner. After a large number of people poured into the mask, white light spots began to fly out from the staff, and then lingered around the wounded inside the mask. As the light spots gradually integrated, the condition of the wounded began to improve at a speed visible to the naked eye. The wounds scubbed and healed quickly, and the complexion changed from pale to rosy. And at the place closest to the staff, Su Yu even saw some wounded people with mutilated limbs gradually growing new limbs surrounded by countless light spots. Except for the seriously injured who require emergency treatment, most of the injured will be treated uniformly in this way, and this process usually lasts for an hour. Come on, let's go in too. In addition to treating injuries, the healing array is also very effective in restoring physical strength. With that said, Bunir led Su Yu into the scope of the light barrier. He had also suffered several serious wounds in previous battles. Although Su Yu was fine on the surface, his internal organs were still aching. During the charge, he was inevitably hit by a few axes. His current defense only reached the surface of his body, which was not enough. After the two of them entered, Bunir did not go deep. He just pulled Su Yu to stand on the edge and opened his mouth to explain. The closer we are to the center of the array, the better the treatment effect will be, but with our physique, it is enough here. Those ordinary soldiers need a front position more than us. Su Yu nodded to express his understanding, then stopped talking and began to close his eyes to feel the effect of the healing array. Waves of warmth spread inside the body as the light spots blended in, and a warm feeling spread from the internal organs, as if the whole body was soaked in a hot spring. The dull pain in the chest and abdomen disappeared, the soreness in the limbs gradually subsided, and the blood volume that was originally only 72% on the panel began to fill up. 10 minutes later, Su Yu opened his eyes and he had returned to his full strength. How's the effect? The treatment had ended long ago. After seeing Su Yu open his eyes, Bunir, who was waiting aside, smiled and asked. Very nice. Okay then, follow me and I'll take you to other places. There's still some time before the banquet starts. Chapter 42. An hour later, when Su Yu followed Bunir back to the square, the entire square had changed drastically. All the previous light balls and staffs had disappeared, replaced by a huge bonfire in the center of the square. The golden-red firelight illuminated the square clearly. Surrounding the bonfire were densely packed circles of long tables, filling the entire square. The long table was filled with all kinds of meat delicacies, fruit drinks, and there was nothing short of it except that there was no wine. Now a large number of people have gathered in the square, and a steady stream of soldiers are coming from all over, but they are not wearing armor, just wearing casual clothes. At a glance, the whole square is bustling with people, the strong aroma is everywhere, and there are endless cheers and laughter. Compared with the bloody and cruel battlefields during the day, the atmosphere here reminded Su Yu of the bustling night markets in the city. He was suddenly pulled back from the cold hell to the boiling world. The huge difference made him feel a little dazed. Compared to Su Yu, Bunir, who had experienced many parties at the side, seemed much calmer, his eyes gleaming as he looked at the many delicacies on the long table. In this remote and cold frontier fortress, there are not many opportunities to eat these delicacies. The surrounding Black Mountain is a wilderness, and farming and hunting are completely unfeasible. All supplies are provided by the Empire. Most of the food we eat is special military rations that have no taste. Although it is nutritious, it has no taste at all. The banquet has begun, come in quickly. After greeting Su Yu, Bunir took the lead and walked towards the center of the square, where the seats of the Glow Knights were. Su Yu also followed closely behind. Along the way, many soldiers raised their glasses to invite Su Yu and praised him endlessly. Su Yu's performance on the battlefield during the day was so outstanding that most soldiers knew about him. Thank you, brother, this time. Invincible, he can be said to be brave. Brother, Awesome! I have a sister. Amidst the sounds of praise that were either elegant or straightforward, Su Yu came to the center of the square. The layout here was no different from other places, except that it was located closer to the bonfire, but it was the place where the entire fortress high-level banquets were held. After arriving here, Su Yu met more familiar faces, and most of the Glow Knights were in this area. After seeing Su Yu's arrival, everyone greeted him warmly. Compared with the ordinary infantry, the people who followed Su Yu to fight the whole process knew better how powerful he was. His strength was on par with their captain, especially the magical flames are even more unpredictable. After responding with a smile one by one, Su Yu followed Bunir straight to the front, where there was only one person sitting on the long table, the leader of the Glow Knights, Kairos. While greeting everyone, Kairos also saw the two people who came together. Ignoring Bunir, who had already unceremoniously sat aside to eat, Kairos looked at Su Yu with a rare smile on his face, pointed to the empty seat on the right, and signaled to Su Yu. Sit. Su Yu followed Shan Ruliu, and after sitting down, he also started to eat. He had been fighting since he entered the world, and his physical strength was exhausted. By now, he was already hungry. Moreover, the food tasted surprisingly good. The meat was delicate and delicious, and the taste was rich and full. It was a taste he had never tasted before. It should be a species unique to this continent. After biting it with his lips and teeth, a charcoal roasted and oily animal leg was eaten in the intestines. The food on the long table also adhered to the style of the military. Most of them were large pieces of meat. Although they were large in size, they were skillfully prepared. Excellent! The animal leg is cooked at the right temperature, charred but not burned. When you tear open the crispy skin, the rich spice flavor and the unique soft and moderate texture of the skin can be heard from your mouth. After swallowing the skin, take another bite and you will find the tender and juicy meat. The flame roasting makes the legs charred on the outside and tender on the inside, and also infuses the unique flavor of spices into the meat juice. The delicious and plump meat rolls in the mouth. Every time you chew, in addition to the fresh and delicate taste, the mellow and smooth meat juice also explodes in the mouth. It can be said that it melts in the mouth and leaves a full mouthful of fragrance. While he was eating vigorously, a rough voice rang out in the square and spread further and further. Soldiers, we returned with a great victory today, haha. Tomorrow, we will have a day off. There will be no military regulations or curfew tonight. Everyone, drink to win. The sound waves spread, and after a moment of silence in the square, cheers and shouts rose into the sky, and the atmosphere was instantly brought to a climax. With a swishing sound, all the soldiers stood up, holding high the fruit drinks in their hands. Drink to win. Ha ha ha, feel free to eat, feel free to drink, you have enough for today. Long live the general. The cheers boiled again, and Lord Thorn laughed loudly in his seat. The heroic laughter spread, and more laughter sounded, shaking the sky. It took a long time to gradually subside. The one with the loudest voice is our general, Thorn. Bunir came over from nowhere, pushed Kairos away, and introduced everyone in the field to Su Yu in a low voice. Kairos looked at Bunir who had squeezed in between the two of them, his eyes twitching slightly, but he still silently moved his position to the side. Su Yu looked at the figure who had just shouted. He was a strong man over 2 meters tall, with a majestic build, red hair, and a rugged appearance. He was the only person in the audience still wearing armor. The armor has a strange shape, like solidified magma, with wisps of red lines wrapped around it, making it look extremely domineering, paired with his full head of red hair. Compared with the boiling bonfire in the center of the square, it gives people the illusion that he is more fiery. Now he was working hard to cook, but the huge animal legs seemed a bit petite in his mouth, almost one bite at a time. When Su Yu was looking at him, Thorn suddenly stopped eating, moved his eyes upward, and met Su Yu's eyes accurately. Their eyes met, Thorn grinned, gave Su Yu a thumbs up, and then continued to work hard. Very strong. Su Yu's expression remained unchanged, but thoughts surged in his heart. Bunir on the side did not notice anything unusual, but continued to introduce to Su Yu one by one along the seats starting from Thorn. The one with the pained look next to Boss Thorn is our quartermaster and manages all the logistics in the fortress. Your contribution to this battle is not small. In addition to the promotion of military rank, you will definitely receive a lot of merit points. It takes some time to get a military rank, but the merit points come quickly. I will take you to him tomorrow. He has a lot of good things in his hands. Hearing the word quartermaster, Su Yu's attention immediately focused. This meant a lot of good things, whether it was soul crystals, rare resources, equipment, or skills, which could effectively improve his strength. He is now nothing is missing. Looking away from Thorn, it was easy to distinguish the person with a pained face, but this quartermaster was not a goblin as Su Yu imagined, or a short little old man. But a young man with a very kind-looking face was looking around at a bunch of soldiers eating haphazardly around him, his face full of pain. This is Lord Hubert, whom I introduced to you before. This is the chief engineer of the fortress, she is. This. Time passed slowly amid the joy of the banquet and Bunir's low-pitched introduction. On the wall of the fortress, a strange black figure quietly emerged. Looking at the noisy bonfire square below, she spoke with a faint tone. Haha, let's celebrate. The peaceful days will soon be over. The soft tones floated in the wind, and the figure turned into black mist and dissipated. Chapter 43. The moonlight was setting in the west, and the banquet in the square was slowly coming to an end. Su Yu also submitted his resignation to Kairos in due course, and then lived in a separate small room under the leadership of Bunir. At its peak, the Black Mountain Fortress could station more than 100,000 troops. Now it can only accommodate tens of thousands of people. There are more than enough spare rooms. With Su Yu's achievements today, there is no need to crowd the Datongpu of the military camp. Although the room is small, it is well equipped, simple in style, clean and tidy, and has a military style. After seeing off Bunir, Su Yu did not rush to rest. Instead, he began to sort out the details of this mission. After entering the world, there was an exciting battlefield. He was busy fighting all the way. Only now did he settle down. Click on Task Details. Main Mission, obtain the Dragon Jewel. Difficulty level, LV6. Mission Introduction, obtain any Dragon Jewel. Mission Information, the Dragon Jewel is one of the most precious treasures in the Altria continent. It is the core of power and the source of life of the dragon. It has the power to resurrect the dead and destroy the living. Task period, 30 calendar days. Mission reward, 5 attribute points 8,000 paradise coins. Mission punishment, forced execution. Looking at the 4 characters forced execution in the mission information, Su Yu showed no signs of wavering. This was already commonplace in Samsara paradise. My mind began to recall information about the world of Dragon Nest. This world is a huge continent with many races, prosperous civilizations, and rich and complete extraordinary systems. Dragons, humans, elves, dwarves, monsters, etc. Build a typical Western fantasy civilization, which includes warriors, rangers, archers, scholars, priests, mages, knights and many other extraordinary professions with complete systems and great potential. The resources that can be taken in are extremely rich. Perhaps he can find a suitable choice in this world for his currently undecided main career. Apart from these, there are currently 3 largest forces in the mainland, namely humans, elves, and monsters. The Cassius Empire on the human side is the most powerful, occupying the most fertile territory on the entire continent. It has a vast territory and many races, and its capital is in the Holy Paradise. The Elf Kingdom lives in a new land in the southern part of the continent, and its capital is the Crescent Forest. Although the territory and the number of races are vastly different than that of humans, the average lifespan of the elves is about 1,000 years, making its hard power no less than that of the human empire. The remaining monster forces are located in the desolate Black Mountain Mountains in the easternmost part of the continent, guarding the dark valley where the Black Dragon sleeps. They are the life and death enemies of humans and elves. In addition to the threat of the Black Dragon monster on the mainland, disputes of all sizes also continued one after another. Not to mention the constant friction between the 2 kingdoms of humans and elves, there were also frequent troubles within the 2 major forces. First, there was a racial rebellion within the Elf Kingdom. The entire Dark Elf lineage fell, and an internal war broke out. After the war, although the Dark Elf were expelled, the Elf Kingdom was also severely damaged. On the side of the human empire, the ideological friction between priests and magicians became more and more intense. No one knows the specific struggle process, but the final result was that the priests who believed in the goddess won the final victory, and the magicians collectively moved to a place close to the Lotus Swamp of the Elf Kingdom announced its separation from the Cassius Empire on the human side. In this world background, the Black Dragon sleeping in the Dark Valley began to gradually revive, and the monsters became more and more active. The various forces that sensed the signs of the Black Dragon's resurgence quickly took action. After some planning, the dragon-slaying alliance was established. In the end, with the united efforts of everyone, the Black Dragon was defeated and peace was restored to the mainland. This is the general plotline of the world of Dragon Nest, a classic but also quite old-fashioned story of a dragon-slaying hero. The current timeline should be when the Black Dragon became active, but the dragon-slaying alliance had not yet been established. There are 3 dragon gems mentioned in the mission information. They are the Black Dragon Gem from the evil side and the Golden Dragon Gem and Silver Dragon Gem from the protagonist group. Bayou is the core of the dragon, something more important than the heart, and a treasure coveted by all the forces in the continent. The reason why the Black Dragon was defeated in the battle in the Dark Valley was also because the precious jade from the chest was pulled out by everyone in the protagonist group, and he was defeated and died, turning into powder on the spot. After clarifying the context, Su Yu gradually had a clue about the completion of the mission. With his mind in mind, he set his sights to the west, which was the direction of the sacred paradise of the human empire and where the protagonists gathered. However, a month's mission time is still enough, and there is no need to be so anxious to participate in the plot. This world is a blessed place for him. Thinking of today's harvest, Su Yu's eyes can't help but feel a little excited. With a wave of his hand, a large box of white and green appeared in front of Su Yu. These were his gains on the battlefield. White treasure chest 6-4. Green treasure chest 1-7. These are all the treasure chests he harvested in this battle. The number is staggering. Although the grades are not too high, the harvest brought by the quantity must not be small. In addition, just by killing monsters, he has obtained rewards of more than 4,000 paradise coins. In such a chaotic battlefield, his abilities are very suitable for display. If he had not joined the charge camp of the Glow Knights later, because of the coordinated killing of enemies, the explosion rate of treasure chests would drop sharply, and the number of treasure chests he could harvest would have been greatly reduced. It is estimated to be over 100. But these are digressions. The important thing now is to open the treasure box. He likes this process very much. This is much more exciting than opening blind boxes or smashing jars. After rubbing his hands, he divided the boxes in front of him into 2 piles and reached out to the white pile first. The treasure chest you opened, white. You get 500 paradise coins. Well, as expected, the individual strength of the monsters is not too strong, especially the goblins and goblins, which are about the same as normal adult humans. These white treasure chests are basically exploded by them, and the quality can be imagined. And no. The treasure chest you opened, white. Obtains a rusty scimitar, white weapon. The treasure chest you opened, white. You get 400 paradise coins. You get hard animal bones, white material. The treasure chest you opened, white. You get a bloody scalp, green material. The treasure chest you opened, white. You get the orc helmet, white armor. The treasure chest you opened, white. You get 200 paradise coins. You get vicious fangs, white weapon. Wait, braces? Su Yu, who was constantly opening the treasure chest, was stunned. This was the first time he heard that there was such equipment as braces. Vicious braces. Origin, Dragon Valley. Quality, white. Category, weapons. Durability, 20/20. Attack power, 6-12. Equipment requirements, physique 5. Equipment effect, vicious, passive, the braces contain a lot of germs. After biting the enemy, the physical strength will be judged. If the judgment is successful, bleeding, high fever, convulsions and other conditions will occur. Tip: be careful not to bite yourself. Rating: 9. Note: white gear is rated on a scale of 1 to 10. Introduction: don't run away, take a bite, and I'll take a bite. Price: 800 paradise coins. Looking at the ferocious-looking braces in his hand, Su Yu looked a little disgusted. Can this thing really be used by humans? After thinking about it, Su Yu put this thing away. It is more reliable to sell this thing to summoners, but it is not ruled out that some weird guys will use it themselves. There are many strange people in the paradise. If it doesn't work, then break it down. Come on, it's useful anyway. The treasure chest continued to be opened in Su Yu's hands in an orderly manner, but most of it contained paradise coins and various strange materials. Occasionally, there were a few pieces of equipment that were also very common styles. Su Yu put them away after a general inspection. The braces were a little more unique and made him look at them a few more times. The range of equipment in the park was really wide. Although the above are things that Suyu cannot use, they are still very good for developing enchantment. Time passed very quickly in the joy of unpacking, until the 35th box was opened, a ball of white light exploded. Chapter 44. The treasure chest you opened, white. You get the calling horn, green equipment. Call. Origin, Dragon Valley. Quality, green. Category, horn. Durability, 10/10. Equipment requirements, Charisma 8 points. Equipment effect 1, Goblin Call, active, consume 10 mana points to summon one goblin to fight for you. The goblin attributes are determined by charm and intelligence. Tip, each summon will consume a point of durability, and the durability can be replenished in the paradise. Rating, 18, note, the rating of green equipment ranges from 11 to 30. Green equipment with a rating of 30 will be marked rare and have special attributes attached. Introduction, call friends and gather in groups. Price, 2,000 paradise coins. He put away the small model horn in his hand with an expressionless face. Although it flashed, Suyu's heart did not fluctuate. This thing worked well, but for him it could only be used to sell money. The thought of adding charm flashed through his mind, and then was decisively suppressed. If he did this, he would probably die of poverty, and the current charm attribute would not be of much help in improving his combat power. The unboxing is continuing, but unfortunately there is not a single shiny one among the more than 20 white boxes left. The 64 boxes only flashed once. Although this luck was not considered extraordinary, it could only be average. Don't worry, the green box is the big one, now it's just a cushion. After comforting himself, Suyu reached out to the remaining 17 green treasure boxes. You opened the treasure chest, green. You get 1,600 points of paradise coins. You get a large mace, green equipment. The gold content of the green treasure chest is indeed much higher than that of the white treasure chest. The paradise coins alone are a considerable amount of income. As for the equipment, there is nothing special. After taking a casual look, Suyu continued to open the box. A dazzling green light swept across, the second flash of the day. You opened the treasure chest, green. You get soul crystal, small. You gain brutal power, green equipment. The green light dimmed, and a crystal clear crystal and a white bone ring appeared in his hand. Savage power, rare. Origin, Dragon Valley. Quality, green. Category, ring, jewelry equipment is a rare item. Durability, 20/20. Equipment requirements, 10 points of physical strength. Equipment effect 1, Savage, active, consumes 10% of health, owns strength +3, physical strength +2, pain reduction by 20%, duration 5 minutes. Tip, the skill consumption is 10% of the maximum health, please use it with caution. Tip, Savage power, active, has a cooldown of 10 hours. Rating, 30, note, the rating of green equipment ranges from 11 to 30. Green equipment with a rating of 30 will be marked rare and have special attributes attached. Introduction, the sleeping beast in the body wakes up. Price, 3,500 paradise coins. The goods released this time are more valuable than before. The soul crystals, small ones, are a good thing. They are in short supply in the park. The improvement of some powerful skills requires the use of soul crystals. The more important thing is this ring. It is a jewelry-like equipment with a full rating, and the attached skills are very powerful, which fits his fighting style very well. Suyu happily put on the ring. The depression caused by the fact that he couldn't use the equipment that he finally got through flashing was relieved a lot. The rest of the process was lackluster. Perhaps he used up too much luck this time, and the subsequent unboxings never happened again. However, a few things suitable for him were still found in the green treasure box. Cavalry Beast Saddle. Origin, Dragon Valley. Quality, green. Category, riding equipment. Durability, 25/25. Equipment requirements, the body size must not exceed the size of a horse. Equipment effect 1, familiarity, passive, compatibility with mount +4. Equipment effect 2, bloodthirsty charge, active, consumes 20 mana points, launches bloodthirsty charge, mounts movement speed +30%, and obtains bloodthirsty state. Tip, this skill will consume a lot of physical strength of the mount and can be stopped at any time. Rating, 23, Note: green equipment is rated from 11 to 30. Introduction: the purple clouds are filmed and the pupils are flying, the bones of the horses and the dragons are different from each other, riding through the jade tower, the golden bridles ring, and the sound breaks the wind of falling flowers. Price: 2,600 paradise coins. Wolf hair cloak. Origin: Dragon Valley. Quality: green. Category: tops. Durability: 25/25. Equipment requirements: none. Equipment effect 1, Beast Fur, passive, toughness +3, can be slowly repaired by swallowing the fur. Equipment effect 2, Wild Temperament, passive, after wearing, charm +2, double the effect on the opposite sex. Rating: 20. Note: green equipment is rated from 11 to 30. Introduction: so what about Sugong in the north of the city? As the saying goes, a man depends on his clothes and a horse depends on his saddle. Price: 2,100 paradise coins. Apart from these two items, other items cannot improve his strength for the time being and need to be processed back to the paradise. Among them, this top equipment comes at the right time. After some sorting, he began to count all the profits obtained from this unboxing, including: there are 37,500 paradise coins, plus the ones he obtained in previous battles and the remaining ones. His current paradise coins total 43,780 points. White quality equipment times 16. Green quality equipment times 7. White material times 18. Green materials times 9. Blue material times 1. Soul crystal times 2. A quite exaggerated amount. For a first level contractor, more than 40,000 paradise coins are already a huge amount of money. Coupled with a large number of equipment, it can be said to be a windfall. It was also a big surprise for Su Yu. After all these resources were converted, they were enough to support his strength. All the equipment was improved to a higher level, and the enchantment science he had just acquired could also make great progress. In addition to the wolf hair cloak and brutal power ring already worn on his body, Su Yu put away the equipment and materials he obtained one by one. Let's not mention the materials for now. Most of the equipment is scimitars, maces, heavy armors, and the like, which are of little use to Su Yu now. The weapon type is not as good as his Fang Tian Huaji, and the armor type is not as high as his own defense, and will affect his flexibility. The treasure chest gains are only the first wave, and there will be talent gains later. Although he used most of the fire on the battlefield to burn monster equipment, but some high-quality fires, without affecting his own combat power, he still took advantage of the opportunity. Absorbed a lot. Taking out the fire pattern steel that had not been consumed before, the fire boiled in his hands, and the next step was strengthening time. Hunter's strength +1, physical strength +1. Hunter's life +25, fire resistance +13. After consuming most of the food fire, he gained another 2 attribute points. After the basic attributes increased, the demand for the quality of food fire also increased. The food fire produced by monsters such as ogres and orcs could hardly keep up with his. The demand is there, he needs stronger fuel, such as a giant dragon. The huge size of the dark dragon in this world appeared in his mind. Su Yu licked his lips with fiery eyes. After restraining his unrestrained thoughts, Su Yu sat cross-legged on the bed. Next, he would go to the spiritual space to receive the third wave of harvest. The size of the long-lost spiritual space is still the same as before, the only difference is that there is an extra watchdog. After pushing open the door of the forging room, what caught Su Yu's eyes was a furry animal face with a pleasing meaning. Not seeing you for one day is like 3 autumns, boss. Glancing at Dowdy who was still sitting obediently under the big tree, Su Yu ignored him and walked towards the edge of the floating island. As soon as he reached the edge, a continuous roar came from below. Looking down, I saw that the originally widened octagonal cage was once again filled with people. Tall ogres and orcs were catching and killing each other in cages. The scene was very lively. A huge warhammer appeared in Su Yu's hand and he jumped off the ring. Boom! A huge roar surged out along with the vibration, and with the blessing of gravity and collapse force, it exploded like a large shock bomb in the center of the ring. The entire octagonal cage began to tremble violently, and the 3 figures in the center of the ring disintegrated into a starry sky on the spot. The ground seemed to be churning with water waves, and the remaining orcs and ogres also fell and staggered in the violent shaking. In the starry sky, Su Yu slowly stood up and swept across the chaotic monsters all around. The warhammer in his hand quietly turned into a 3-meter-long Fangtian painted halberd. Under the pressure of the hunting wind, Fang Tian's painted halberd waved the airwaves and spread across all directions. The figures in the sky flew away in all directions accompanied by countless stars, and hit the wall of the octagonal cage with a sound like a drum. Looking from the floating island, a magnificent and vast star ring is formed in the octagonal cage. In the center of the star ring, a figure holding a halberd and with purple flames in its eyes leaps up. Come and kill. The halberd was smashed down violently, the figures around him were thrown away, and the airwaves stirred the stars. Ha 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 ha! Chapter 45 Hunter Intelligence +2. In the raging sea of fire, the scope of the spiritual space widened again, and the milky white spiritual barrier also grew larger, like an exquisite little world suspended above the sea of fire. Within the barrier, the roaring and howling sounds of the battle have subsided, and calm has returned to the octagonal cage. In addition to 2 huts and a jujube tree, there is a small martial arts arena on the floating island above. The blue stone-paved martial arts arena is as flat as a mirror, with rows of mahogany weapon racks lined up on both sides, with 18 types of weapons on them. In the center of the martial arts arena, a figure was moving around in the arena, with a halberd in his hand that was as powerful as a dragon playing in the water. It looked majestic and majestic. The halberd head drives the surrounding airflow vertically and horizontally, forming white wind ropes visible to the naked eye. From a distance, it looks like a dragon swimming all over the body, which is very mysterious. Suddenly, the human figure paused, and the halberd in his hand swung horizontally, changing from extremely fast to still. The wind ropes all around collapsed one after another, and strong whines roared out from the center of the martial arts arena. The weapon racks on both sides of the blowing sound clanked. The weapons on it buzzed and roared. Hoo! Su Yu took a deep breath and exhaled slowly, and then the surging energy in his body slowly subsided. Sure enough, fighting is the best digestive aid. After some activities, all the attributes of growth have been adapted. Putting Fang Tian's painted halberd in his hand and dancing with halberd flowers, Su Yu walked in 2s and 2s to the weapon stand and placed the halberd firmly. Then he left the martial arts arena and walked towards the square table under the jujube tree in the courtyard. The spiritual space is not as simple as the pure spiritual world. Compared with the pure spiritual world, it has a deeper connection with the external material world. Changes in physical fitness, emotional state, etc. from the outside world will also be fed back into the spiritual space. Therefore, in the spiritual space, Su Yu can also hone his skills through fighting, performing martial arts, etc. and feed back them to the outside world. At the bottom of the jujube tree, Doughty, who was lying down, saw Su Yu walking in and flattered him in time. Boss, Fang Tian's skill in painting halberds has become more and more superb. I guess he has already surpassed Mr. Chen who taught us how to draw halberds. Su Yu, who had just taken a sip of tea, paused, put down the teacup in his hand, and looked at Doughty at his feet, with a smile on his face. It seems you know a lot. No, no matter what, we belong to the same body and have the same origin. Let me tell you, there is no need for you to be so defensive about me. Doughty stretched out his paw and pointed at the light shield above. Besides, with this thing here, I can't make any waves, so there's no need to tie me up. The Doughty under his feet was still chattering, but Su Yu had already turned his attention away from it. He squinted at the spiritual barrier with some faint green light shining above, feeling a little surprised. Is this evolved? Su Yu clicked on the introduction of the soul barrier, and sure enough, it had changed. Psychic barrier, growth equipment. Origin, X-Men, Professor X. Quality, green. Category, psychic protective gear, this is an extremely rare item. Durability, none. Psychic equipment has no entity and no durability. Equipment requirements, this equipment has been bound by, Xinhuo. Equipment effect 1, isolation, passive immune to most mental damage and mind control skills, the strength is determined by the quality of the current equipment. Tip, at this stage, you can only be immune to green quality skills. Tip, hunters should explore the equipment growth method by themselves. Rating, 30, the equipment defaults to this quality extreme value. Introduction, boy, the mission was great, this is my commission. Price, cannot be traded, cannot be transferred. The mental barrier changed from white quality to green. Thinking about the previous changes in the mental space, he had a vague guess in his mind. It seems that the mind barrier has been completely integrated with the mind space, so as the mind space expands after absorbing starlight, the mind barrier will also expand, and the quality will also increase. Boss, boss! The gradually rising shouts sounded from his ears, and Su Yu's thoughts were interrupted. Beneath him, seeing Su Yu staring at the light shield above his head, Doughty couldn't help but raise his voice. After Su Yu lowered his head to look at him, he pulled the chain around his neck and continued to speak. Boss, why don't you untie this thing for me, and I can guard the door for you. I'll kill one of the spiritual bodies in the octagonal cage, and I'll kill a pair of two. This way you don't have to go through the trouble of doing it yourself every time. You can just come and inspect it from time to time. What do you think? After listening, looking at Doughty's large, innocent eyes, Su Yu chuckled and replied. Not really. Just be patient. Staring into Doughty's eyes and giving a faint warning, Su Yu left the spiritual space. In the room of the Black Mountain Fortress, Su Yu, who was sitting cross-legged, opened his eyes and looked at the sky outside the window. It's still early before dawn, so go to bed and sleep. As soon as his mind was relaxed, fatigue came over him like a tide. At the end of the day, he was completely exhausted. After lying on the bed, within a moment, his breathing calmed down and he fell into a deep sleep. The whole night was uneventful, and it wasn't until dawn that Su Yu woke up. Pale golden rays of light shot in from the window lattice and spread on the small table in the center of the room. Rhythmic shouts came one after another from outside the room. Although it is off to rest today, there are still many restless soldiers training spontaneously on the training ground. Amidst the sonorous shouts, Su Yu quickly regained consciousness. After washing briefly, he took out a square box he carried in the space and placed it on the table. After inputting a few points of mana into the square box, a few wisps of boiling heat began to emerge from the square box. After tearing off the outer cover, a rice bowl with full color, flavor was completed. This self-heating rice-like thing is a light meal developed by the employees of the park. It is convenient, simple, diverse, high quality, low priced, and tastes pretty good. In view of his outstanding cooking skills, after discovering this thing, Su Yu stored a lot of it in the paradise. This thing only has mana value. After eating, he cleared the table and was about to go out to find Bunir when there was a knock on the door. Su Yu stood up and opened the door, but the person outside the door was not Bunir as he imagined. It was Hubert, the temple priest who was responsible for directing many priests to cast spells in the square yesterday. Different from yesterday's majestic appearance in a luxurious priest's robe, today he is wearing a plain robe, with long and smooth hair, a calm demeanor, and a clear face, which makes people feel like they want to get close to him unconsciously. The same high charm, but compared to Bunir, this one's charm is obviously more corrosive. Su Yu was secretly wary, but his face was calm, even with a bit of respect. After taking a few steps back, he bowed slightly. Lord Hubert. Haha, you don't have to be so polite. In the Black Mountain Fortress, you and I are all comrades fighting against the demonic tide, so feel free to do whatever you want. Hubert waved his hand, indicating that Su Yu did not need to salute, with a gentle smile on his face. Your Excellency Xin Huo made outstanding achievements in the battle yesterday. The purple flame burned thousands of armors with one blow, which was an eye-opener for me and the general. It's just a rudimentary means. Sir Hubert is ridiculous. He healed the troops in the square yesterday. Under the holy light, the bones were withered and flesh was regenerated. Resurrecting the dead is a great method. I also benefited a lot. Hubert was not humble after hearing this, but just performed a strange courtesy. This is all the grace of the goddess, I am just the agent. Seeing this, Su Yu followed Hubert's example and performed the same etiquette. After standing up, Su Yu spoke again. I wonder why Lord Hubert came here to look for me. There was a power outage just now, damn. Chapter 46. After listening to Su Yu's question, Hubert's smile did not diminish, but he did not answer. Instead, he asked a question first. Knight Bunir made an appointment with you last night to take you to the quartermaster's office to redeem your merits today, right? Yes. Su Yu nodded in response. Haha, that's right. Knight Bunir suddenly received an urgent military order this morning, so he couldn't come, but he didn't want to break the appointment. Bunir and I are quite familiar with each other, and I also wanted to make friends with you, so I took over from Bunir. Neil's mission is to guide you. I am also quite familiar with this Black Mountain Fortress. Looking at the gentle and handsome faces in front of him, Su Yu was stunned for a moment, then grinned and looked directly into Hubert's slightly narrowed eyes. Then I'll trouble Lord Hubert. Haha, I said there's no need to be polite. There's no need to add the word adult. What's more, we are not in a superior-subordinate relationship. Be casual, be casual. The Black Mountain Fortress is larger than Su Yu imagined, with numerous facilities and complicated routes. From the outside, the fortress looks cold and rough, but many of its interior decorations appear exquisite and elegant. When walking inside the fortress, you can see many exquisite relief buildings from time to time, which add a different charm to this black fortress. These are basically the masterpieces of the elves. As immortals, art seems to have penetrated into their bones over the long passage of time. Even when building such a military fortress, they did not forget to leave many exquisite reliefs and statues inside. As for the humans and dwarves, they are not so interested. The humans are mostly pragmatists, while the dwarves look down on the elaborate artistic style of the elves. In a long corridor, Hubert and Su Yu walked forward one after another. Hubert led the way while explaining the stories told on the reliefs inside the covered bridge. That is the myth of the elves, the story of the Tree of Life and the Elf Queen. The Tree of Life is the source of elves, and all elves are born on the Tree of Life, and the Elf Queen is the highest leader of the elves, guiding the entire elves forward. Direction. I have to say that Hubert is very suitable for telling stories. His tone is soft, with a hint of mystery, as if he is reciting poetry, and he narrates the remoteness and romantic temperament of the elf mythology very well. Su Yu was listening silently behind him, watching the detailed and vivid reliefs in front of him rise and fall with Hubert's tone, which made him feel like he was watching an epic blockbuster. The scene was particularly harmonious for a while. After getting along for a period of time, the atmosphere between them became more relaxed and casual, at least not as polite and unfamiliar as before. However, Su Yu always maintained a sense of caution in his heart. Considering Hubert's status, the reason for coming to him was a bit too deliberate. Moreover, judging from the respectful look on Bunir's face when he looked at Hubert in the square yesterday, it's not like they were acquainted with each other, as Hubert said. Finally, the long corridor came to the end, and Hubert's narration also came to an end. After leaving the epic corridor bridge that was flickering behind him, a dazzling golden glow splashed on Hubert's plain white shirt and Su Yu's black hair. On the big cloak, there is a clear distinction between them, and at the same time there is a hint of harmony that complements each other. This is the myth of the elves. In fact, it is not wrong to call it an epic. After all, the Tree of Life does exist. It's amazing. This agreement with Su Yu really comes from the heart. Humanity's epic is equally shocking. When I have the chance, I will tell you about the Empire's prosperity. Haha, I've been waiting for that fire for a long time. Hubert also laughed twice, then pointed to a tall building behind him and said, "That's the munitions department. Just go in. The person in charge of the munitions department is called Upton. Bunir should have introduced him to you last night." Su Yu nodded and expressed his sincere gratitude. "Thank you very much for your explanation along the way. It's just a small matter." Hubert waved his hand. "However, I have a question that I have always been very curious about. I wonder if I can satisfy my curiosity." Su Yu did not hesitate and said decisively, "Oh, may I ask?" "Xinhuo, what I'm more curious about is what is your profession? Judging from your performance on the battlefield yesterday, you seem to be somewhat related to the power of warriors, the magic of mages, and the strangeness of shamans, but you are not one of them." "Any of them?" After Hubert asked the question, he looked at Su Yu with eyes full of inquiry. "Of course, it's just pure curiosity. If it involves secrets, Xinhuo, you don't have to answer me." After Su Yu hesitated for a moment, he still replied in a relaxed tone. "It's not a secret. I haven't decided on a specific occupation yet, and my skills are just pieced together." "Oh." Hubert's eyes lit up. "Then that flame you used yesterday." Su Yu opened his right hand slightly, and the boiling fire ignited in his palm. "This is a personal talent." "Talent? Interesting. This is a very rare talent." Hubert looked at the fire in front of him, leaned slightly closer, his eyes flashed with lightning, and his tone was leisurely. "Are you joking? There are so many geniuses on the continent of Altria, and there are all kinds of unique and superb talents. My little flame is not so strange." "That's not true. There are indeed many strange talents on the continent, but your flame is absolutely unique." Staring at the purple flames in front of him, the lightning in Hubert's eyes became more intense, the corners of his lips were slightly raised, and his whole temperament suddenly became a little deeper. Looking at Hubert in front of him, Su Yu remained unmoved, but narrowed his eyes slightly to cover up the purple meaning that was gradually spreading in his eyes. As if he had noticed something, Hubert stood still slightly close to him, the lightning in his eyes dissipated, and his gentle temperament returned. Haha, I'm sorry, I'm a little lost. I can't help but be curious when I look at mysterious and unique things. Don't worry, I don't have any ill intentions, I'm just a little too curious. Looking into Su Yu's calm eyes, Hubert took 2 steps back, raised his right hand, and made a light twisting gesture with his thumb and index finger. However, if you want to consider a career, you have to be careful and don't waste your talents. Seeing that Hubert on the opposite side had returned to normal, Su Yu waved away the fire in his hand, and didn't bother to make a polite and respectful gesture again, and asked lightly. What advice do you have? Haha, I can't say I'm giving you advice, but I still have some experience in this career path. Hubert's tone began to turn serious. Zhenhuo, do you know what a career is? The way. Yes, career is the path of our predecessors, a smooth road with a promising future. The ancestors have swam through enough mud, removed the dense thorns, and crossed the winding astray. At the same time, they have also set foot on a high enough position to leave a path for future generations. Our descendants will continue to embark on this path, continuously broadening and elevating it, and it will become the current professional inheritance. There are many professions on the mainland today, but in the final analysis they all originate from the original 9 professions. Warriors, knights, mages, priests, archers, rangers, assassins, shamans, and scholars. These 9 are the foundation of everything and the path set by the 9 ancestors. Nowadays, various professions on the mainland are flourishing, but in the end it is to widen along these 9 roads. Having said this, Hubert paused and looked at Su Yu with eyes that became full of meaning. But your talent is different. That kind of flame is rare, separated from the power of the 9 paths. Do you know what this means? Fire. Before Su Yu could answer, Hubert spoke first. Meaning you could be the 10th man. As the words fell, the surrounding air became silent. 2 pairs of eyes looked at each other, one pair was calm but concealed thunder, and the other pair was blazing but deep inside. Chapter 47. In the munitions department, a young man was sitting behind the counter, looking at the account book in front of him and scratching his head. Oh, I ate almost 3 days' worth of food reserves last night. These people must be very good at eating, and so is the general. Forget it, it's almost time to replenish supplies anyway. Then I'll apply for more shares from the Empire, as well as weapons. While he was immersed in settling accounts, a greeting came to the young man's ears. Hello, is this Quartermaster Upton? The young man raised his head and saw a tall figure standing in front of the counter. The strong muscles were faintly visible, especially a pair of arms. Even through the clothes, the muscle lines could be clearly seen, like steel poured into iron. There are many muscular soldiers in the fortress, but there are not many who give such a condensed and capable look. Coupled with the dark black wolf cloak, a wild and domineering temperament comes to the face. Yes, I'm Quartermaster Upton. Upton's body straightened slightly as he sat behind the counter, and his eyes wandered around the figure in front of him. I remember you, right? Bunir greeted me yesterday. Here is the supply list from the munitions department. Take a look. With that said, Upton took out a list from under the counter and handed it to Su Yu, and then continued to write and draw on the account book. He could see that the person in front of him was very strong, but it had little to do with him. After staying in the position of quartermaster for a long time, he has seen too many strong men coming and going, and as time goes by, he becomes less and less concerned. Thank you. After thanking Su Yu, he took the list, and the prompt for Samsara Paradise appeared. You have activated the merit exchange system. In this world, you are not allowed to intimidate Quartermaster Upton or any other bad means. If you are hostile to Quartermaster Upton, you will be expelled from the Black Mountain Fortress. Su Yu was not surprised by the Paradise prompt. The Quartermaster controlled a large amount of supplies, and the force value was generally not too high. Therefore, there will always be some contractors who are not so clear-minded and are greedy and choose to take risks. Judging from the Paradise prompts, this kind of incident should have happened more than once. The Battle Merit Redemption list has been activated. The exchange list is as follows. Soul Crystal, small. Stock, 10 pieces. Price, 300 merit points. Warrior Inaugural Medal. Inventory, 3 pieces. Price, 300 merit points. Knightly Installation Medal. Inventory, 3 pieces. Price, 300 merit points. Priest Installation Medal. Inventory, 3 pieces. Price, 300 merit points. Holy Potion. Place of Origin, Dragon Nest, Temple of Sleep. Quality, Blue. Type, Restoration. Effect, after drinking, restore 70% of health and quickly recover from injuries. Rating, 58, note, blue items are rated from 31 to 70. Introduction, this is a gift from the goddess. Stock quantity, 5. Price, 500 merit points. Iron-blooded battle armor. Place of origin, Dragon Valley, Holy Paradise. Quality, blue. Category, protective gear. Durability, 50/50ths. Equipment requirements, 12 points of strength and 12 points of stamina. Equipment effect, for every 30% drop in health of bloody, passive, he will gain strength +2 and stamina +2. Rating, 50, note, blue items are rated from 31 to 70. Introduction, the more I bleed, the stronger I become, unyielding in 100 battles, and living towards death. Stock quantity, 1. Price, 1400 merit points. Glory of Holy Light. Place of origin, Dragon Nest, Temple of Sleep. Quality, blue. Category, staff. Durability, 40/40ths. Magic attack power, 27 to 54. Equipment requirements, intelligence 15 points. Equipment effect 1, Holy Light Resurrection, active, consumes 30% of mana, can restore 80% of the target's health, and clear its negative effects. Equipment effect 2, Glory, passive, when casting light spells and thunder spells, the spell consumption is reduced by 10%, and the spell power is increased by 10%. Tip, Holy Light Resurrection can only be used once per day. Rating, 58, note, blue items are rated from 31 to 70. Introduction, Holy Light, that enemy is worth fighting. Stock quantity, 1. Price, 2000 merit points. The items and equipment on the item list are densely arranged in a large area, but except for the blue items on the top, most of them are green quality equipment. For contractors at this stage, green equipment is already the mainstream. Su Yu looked at his merit points. There were 1180 points in total, 400 of which came from the impact of the fire on the entire battle, and the rest came from the number of enemies he killed. The items in the list, except for the 2 blue pieces of equipment, are all within his redemption range, especially the 3 professional inauguration medals. After redemption, he can directly have a main profession with great potential. The world of Dragon Nest is a big producer of professions. The bonuses of basic professions are not many, but they are extremely universal. After the basic professions, there are many rare or mysterious second-level job transfers, which is powerful. Start. Moreover, basic professions such as warriors, knights, priests, etc. In addition to the world of Dragon Nest, there are also many professional inheritances that can be seamlessly connected in other derived worlds, so there is no need to worry about the problem of being stuck after reaching the maximum potential. If he hadn't had the previous conversation with Hubert, he might have chosen a basic profession first, and then sought a more powerful second-level job transfer, but now, he had greater ambitions. The previous conversation with Hubert outside the munitions station echoed in Su Yu's mind again. The 10th person. How to say? The inheritance of a profession requires the inaugural medal, which is the inheritance seed of the profession. After absorbing it, you can possess the power of the profession. But in addition to the specific professional medals, our temple also has a unique blank medal, which is condensed with the divine power of the goddess. It does not have corresponding professional characteristics, but is pure divine power. After you absorb it, and then use the magic crystal of Warcraft or high-quality energy gems as a driving source, the goddess's divine power can temporarily enhance your characteristics and extend them to the extent that you can condense professional seeds. In this way, a new profession was born. It's that simple. It sounds very simple. To realize this process, first of all, the characteristics you possess must have enough potential, so that after the expansion of divine power, you can reach the level where you can condense professional seeds. Secondly, the energy source you use for driving must be strong enough, so that the expansion effect of divine power will be better, and the new profession formed will be stronger. Finally, the profession you have condensed has no subsequent secondary transfer. It all depends on your personal development. How far you can go depends entirely on your ability. Only if you are strong enough to be recognized by the entire continent, can you become the true 10th man. I have explained the pros and cons clearly. Whether you have the courage and ambition to take this rugged road depends on your choice. To be honest, I am very optimistic about your flame. It's interesting. How do you exchange for the blank metal you mentioned? Do you use merit points? Haha, it seems you have made a decision. This is my priest token. With this, you can exchange it with Upton for a blank metal. So why is Lord Hubert so enthusiastic? Don't worry, I told you that I don't have any ill intentions. I'm just more curious. I want to see more possibilities and a richer future. Of course, if the new profession you condensed is promoted to the point where it can be divided into inheritance seeds, I also hope to get one. Make a deal. The conversation in his mind dispersed. Su Yu came to his senses at the counter, put down the list in his hand, took out Hubert's token and placed it in front of the quartermaster. The metal token fell on the wooden table, making a crisp sound, which also attracted the attention of Upton, who was still immersed in settling accounts. Upton looked up, glanced at the token on the counter, and hesitated. Then he looked at Su Yu with a strange expression. You don't have a career? Su Yu nodded. When Upton saw Su Yu's confirmation, his face became weirder, but he didn't say much. After putting away the tokens on the counter, he took out a delicate small box and put it in front of Su Yu, and then asked Rode. The things are inside, do you need to exchange anything else? No thank you. After putting away the box, Su Yu turned and left. Now his merit points are in a state of more than enough, and he is not going to exchange them for other things for the time being. He is quite interested in the 2 blue pieces of equipment. There is no shortage of ways to earn merit points here, so now save a wave. Behind him, Upton looked at Su Yu's retreating figure, with some pity in his eyes, and murmured to himself. Oh, it's another person who was fooled by Sir Hubert's 10th man theory. I guess this is the 3rd one this year. Tisk 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 tisk. While he was sighing, a soldier quickly ran from the door. Lord Upton, the general has ordered you to go to the conference room immediately. There is an emergency meeting. Ah, emergency meeting. Black Mountain Fortress, a large conference room. Several senior officials of the fortress sat around a round table, and the atmosphere was somewhat depressing. Thorn, who was in charge, looked solemn and spoke first. Is the situation sure? The next one, a middle-aged man wearing a pointed hood and dressed as an assassin, responded respectfully. Report to the general, the intelligence is confirmed. A large number of monsters are pouring out from the Dark Valley. The number is no less than 100,000. In addition to the ones attacking the fortress head-on, there are also 2 that are bypassing the fortress. Heading towards the rear of the Empire. 100,000 monsters? The monsters that attacked the city 5 years ago were only 80,000, right? Are those monsters crazy? After listening to the man's information, the chief engineer beside him became a little unable to sit still and couldn't help but exclaimed. Rebecca, calm down. As long as I'm still here, those demon cubs can't break this fortress. Thorn's expression remained unchanged, he pressed his palms to signal the engineer to be quiet, and then turned to look at the clerk aside. Is this the first time in the past few years that monsters have become restless? Reporting to the general, the monsters have become more active since 3 years ago. This is the 6th time the monsters have attacked the city in 3 years, and it is also the largest number so far. Even though we eliminated the number of monsters once a month before, the number of monsters attacking the city is still becoming more and more frequent. After listening to the clerk's report, Thorn turned his head and looked in the direction of the Dark Valley. Even though he was separated by a wall, his eyes seemed to be looking through the fortress and towards the dragon sleeping deep in the valley. It seems that the information sent from the elves is correct. Elf. Rebecca felt a little sensitive when she heard the word elf and asked quickly. Thorn, how come you have contact with the elves? What information did they send? I don't have much friendship with elves, but a few days ago the elf princess Nelvin suddenly sent an elf to deliver a message, saying that the magic dragon in the Dark Valley is about to awaken, so that our Black Mountain Fortress should be prepared for emergencies. Humph, the words of those elves may not be trustworthy. Have you forgotten that the Empire killed an unknown number of elves during the Battle of Forgotten Ruins 50 years ago? How would they be so kind as to remind us? Rebecca spoke angrily. Her father died in the Battle of the Ruins 50 years ago, so she was quite prejudiced against the elves, even though she knew that the original initiator of the war was humans. That was so many years ago. With Nelvin's status, he would not talk nonsense about such an important event that affected the entire continent. And looking at the current situation of the monsters in Black Mountain, I'm afraid this statement is not true. Thorn also knew the origin of Rebecca's bad attitude and didn't pay much attention to it. He just replied a few words based on the matter. Hubert, who was sitting beside him, also spoke. The elf is probably right. Yesterday Bishop Telemai also sent me a message. I should pay attention to the movements of the Dark Valley recently. He has already sensed that the increasingly dense darkness in the valley has a tendency to expand outward. Pastor Telemai also has this premonition, so he's probably right. Demon Dragon, I didn't expect that I would have a chance to fight the Demon Dragon after guarding the Black Mountain Fortress for 30 years. As he spoke, Thorn's eyes towards the Dark Valley gradually changed from gloomy to fiery. Haha, after guarding this thing for half a life, it's time to fight it. A few decades ago, the Empire could let it hide in the Dark Valley and sleep, but now I can make it unable to fly in this fortress. Thorn's passionate voice echoed in the conference room, making the water glasses on the conference table buzz and tremble, while also sweeping away the somewhat gloomy atmosphere before. Upton, how long do we have enough supplies in the fortress to support us? Report to General, it won't be a problem to support it for several months. Okay, I want to see how long these 100,000 monsters are enough for our Black Mountain Fortress to kill. Bernie, please report the situation in the Dark Valley of the Empire, especially indicating that the dragon may be showing signs of recovery. Yes, General. Neuron, the secretary on the side, took the order. Auguste, how many monsters are there in the two groups that bypass the fortress and go to the rear? General, the number of monsters on each wing is about 5,000, including about 400 orc cavalry. The man who answered this time was the man dressed as an assassin. He is the strongest scout in the fortress. That's 10,000 monsters. Thorn touched his chin and looked down at Kairos, who had been unable to speak. Kairos, I will give you another 1,000 cavalry, and lead the knights to wipe out all the devils who dare to dig into my back. As you command, General. Kairos promised, but looked at the general as if he wanted to say something. Hey! Thorn clearly saw the clues and shouted angrily, if you have something to say it quickly, and if you have anything to say, let it go. General, I want someone from you. Explain. The soldier who used purple fire on the battlefield yesterday. That boy, I have some impressions. He is a good prospect. Okay, he will join your knights. You can decide on the position. Hubert, inform the priests to prepare to activate the fortress runes. As you command, General. Rebecca, control all the airships to take off, and the city wall magic crystal cannons will be warmed up. As you command, General. After giving orders to everyone, Thorn slammed his big hand on the conference table in front of him and shouted loudly at the same time. The order is given, the trumpets are blown, and all the soldiers in the fortress are ready for war. I will make sure that all attacking monsters will never come back. Yes, General. Chapter 48. Woo! The vast sound of horns resounded in every corner of the Black Mountain Fortress. The soldiers scattered everywhere paused, and invariably raised their heads to look at the main tower in the center of the fortress, where a dazzling red light had already lit up. Prepare for battle. Wear armor. The same shouts came from the mouths of different soldiers, throughout the entire fortress, followed by the sound of violent running. Countless soldiers were flowing through the streets in the fortress, like blood flowing, and the rumbling footsteps were like the beating of the heart. The Black Mountain Fortress came to life in an instant, transforming from a cold city into a boiling and roaring giant beast. The contractors mixed in the crowd looked confusedly around them, all heavily armed, and they were constantly rushing towards the various corps on the four walls of the city. It wasn't until the park's reminder sounded that I woke up from a dream and joined the crowd of people running. The first stage of the large-scale event Demonic Dragon's Resurrection Monster Siege has started. All contractors are requested to actively participate in the battle. The contribution value of this event will be recorded throughout the event, and a unified settlement will be carried out after the event. Damn it, is this broken world always at war? While running, a contractor couldn't help but lament among the crowd. Just be content. The battle to defend the city is much better than the battle on the plains. At least there is protection. A rich voice sounded from behind, and a strong man quickly overtook him from behind. The contractor who had spoken before also quickened his pace and spoke to the strong man in front. Boss of Northern Xinjiang, where are we going now? Go to the east city wall, facing the direction of the demonic tide. Since you want to record the contribution value, you must give it a try. The final mission reward for such a large-scale event must be high. Inform everyone in the group to gather at the east city wall. Yes, boss. The majestic horn sounds began to gradually stop after half a quarter of an hour in the fortress. At this time, the entire Black Mountain fortress was completely different from before. Detailed and complicated spell runes began to appear on all sides of the towering city wall, faintly emitting a faint glow. On the city wall, tens of thousands of soldiers were armed and ready, and behind them were flags hung high, rustling in the howling wind. The barriers were tight, and the flags blocked the sun, condensing an evil aura that soared into the sky. Above the fortress, 6 majestic sacred airships were lined up in a row, casting large shadows on the ground. At the front of the airships, the huge main gun muzzles had extended out of the hull, and the muzzles were facing the distant site in front of them. A black line. Among the defenders on the city, after looking at the layout of the fortress, a contractor gradually calmed down from the anxiety before the war, and joked with his teammates with a smile. Tisk, it's such a big battle. I can't even imagine how the monsters on the opposite side must fight to break through our fortress. Compared with the solemn and silent fortress army, the contractors mixed among them seemed much more casual, especially when they were standing on the high city wall at their feet, and the large shadows cast by the majestic airships above their heads gave them a sense of confusion. Feeling an unparalleled sense of security, I couldn't help but start whispering. Don't take it lightly. The stronger our side is, the harder it is to deal with the enemy on the opposite side. Unlike those who are blindly optimistic, there are also many knowledgeable people among the contractors. As the leader of a small adventure group, Beijiang's expression became more serious when everyone began to relax, and he reminded the group members behind him. He looked ahead at the black line that slowly invaded his sight range, and his pupils gradually dilated. In front of the fortress, between the tawny plain and the blue sky, a thick black line suddenly inserted. The black was just a thin line at first, and then it quickly spread out until it was overwhelming. It was like pouring a large amount of ink into a basin of clear water. In an instant, everything was covered with rich and sticky black. In the sky are black clouds condensed with monstrous demonic energy, covering the sky, and on the ground are mountains and plains full of demonic creatures, surging in like an overwhelming mountain. The upper and lower waves were like torrential waves pouring out of the floodgates. The blackness covered all the colors in the sky and the earth, leaving only the creepy black. This is a monster siege. Some trembling voices came out of Beijiang's mouth. This was definitely the most shocking sight he had ever seen in his life. The relaxed atmosphere of the teammates behind him had long been shattered by the black tide in front of him. Their faces were earth-colored and their pupils were dilated. The sound of dancing flags, the sound of soldiers and armor, the sound of wind, conversation, and even breathing gradually became inaudible in my ears. Only the roar of the monster that gradually increased filled my ears. Suddenly, a loud shout came from above, shattering the roar in his ears. The demonic tide has arrived, kill! Thorn's shout spread across the entire battlefield, and then 6 beams of light descended from the sky. The main guns of the 6 airships fired simultaneously, and 6 groups of dazzling light spots exploded in the black tide, accompanied by roars. The sound resounded, and a huge column of smoke rose into the sky, colliding with the black cloud of demonic energy above. Under the smoke pillar and in the demonic tide, huge pits suddenly appeared, with nothing else in sight except black ash everywhere. After the demonic tide bloomed in the light spot, the offensive stagnated slightly, and then quickly surged up. Under the surging black tide, several huge pits disappeared without a trace, leaving only the approaching black tide under the city wall. Long-range attack, let go! Boom! 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 Continuous vibrations sounded, and the rows of magic crystal cannons densely arranged between the crenels on the city wall began to fire. Countless blue thunder light groups poured down from the city wall and from the airship like a torrential rain, followed by they were arrows filling the sky like black clouds falling down. Countless bloody stamens suddenly bloomed on the black tide on the plain, and black and red intertwined into patches on the plain. The contractors on the fortress also came to their senses amidst the vibration of the magic crystal cannon, and various long-range weapons began to fall downwards as if they were free. Quick, don't hide and tuck us in. Beat them all. If the fortress is broken, none of us will be able to survive. Send out all the long-range weapons in the regiment and fire them all for me. Pistol? You have to throw the darts down for me. If you can kill everyone, count them all. Under the stimulation of the magic tide, both the adventure group and the individual people began to get angry. Under this amount of magic tide, if they lost the protection of the fortress, all of them would be cold, and they would not be able to make any waves. Stand up. Contractors of all colors show their special abilities. Among the arrows and thunderous light groups, all kinds of messy long-range attacks are also beginning to be mixed in. Bullets, artillery, magic ninjutsu emerge endlessly, and there is even a man dressed as a ninja who is working very hard. He threw the kunai down. Meteorite, get out of the way. During the fierce battle, the monster side was naturally not immune to the beating. Countless boulders burning with fierce flames flew out from behind the demonic tide and crashed down towards the fortress. Suddenly, a large number of sparks exploded on the city wall, rubble flew, a large number of soldiers were smashed into pieces, and golden red flames began to spread on the city wall. Different from the ordinary flames in the last battle on the plains, this time the meteorite flames carried a trace of the power of dragon's breath. Once contaminated, it would wander among the flesh and bones like gangrene attached to the bones. There's something wrong with the flames, don't get involved. Seeing that the soldier in front of him was quickly burned to charred bones after picking up a trace of flame, Beijiang couldn't help but feel chilled in his heart, and quickly reminded his teammates who were dodging in the chaos. Under the bombardment of meteorites, the neatly arranged city walls began to become chaotic, until a dazzling holy light bloomed on the city walls. Chapter 49. Meteorites continued to fall from above, and golden red flames began to spread on the wall. In the chaos, the firepower of the fortress suddenly dropped sharply, and the black tide on the plain that had been temporarily slowed down by the artillery fire began to surge again, and the front wave was almost approaching the city wall. At this time, the dense magic runes on the city wall began to shine, and a bright holy light emerged from the city wall. The golden red flames were swept away by the blooming holy light. The holy light rose higher and higher until it formed a huge energy shield above everyone, isolating all falling meteorites. Huge meteorites continued to hit the light shield, but they could only explode a stream of fireworks above everyone. The situation in the fortress was stabilized again, the magic crystal cannon defense line resumed roaring, and in addition to soldiers on the city wall, there were also some more priests in white robes. The priest group led by Hubert also rushed to the battlefield immediately after opening the rune defense of the city wall. The priests ran among the wounded, and with the flash of white light in their hands, the wounded quickly regained their combat effectiveness. Amid the roar of war and the roar of monsters, the siege became more intense and gradually reached a climax. The demonic tide at the forefront has flowed countless corpses of monsters through the thunder hell formed by the bombardment of magic crystal cannons, and rushed to the root of the wall of the Black Mountain Fortress. The excited roar of the monsters seemed to be very close at hand, and the contractors above could not help but turn pale. Several contractors leaned slightly on the city wall, and saw that below them were all the monsters with entangled limbs. They kept clinging to each other and formed a group, forming piles of tall mountains of flesh piled on the city wall. Intense thunder light flashed on the city wall and spread on the mountain of meat. The crackling movement resounded endlessly under the city wall. The rich aroma of meat began to spread, and it could be smelled clearly even on the city wall. Are these monsters really life? A contractor was horrified by the horrific scene below and took a few steps back. The monsters seemed to have no pain or fear, only endless violence and greed. The aroma of meat that permeated the surroundings had turned into a choking burnt mess, and billowing black smoke came from under the city wall. It was the thick smoke that emitted from the body after it was burnt to char by thunder. The scene at the base of the wall was no longer enough to be described as hell. Described. Countless monsters with ferocious faces and gaping fangs rushed towards the city wall, stacking up into a mountain of meat. But soon, the entire meat mountain was turned into coke under the boiling thunder, and wailing and thick smoke rose. But even so, the monsters continued to rush forward. One meat mountain fell, and hundreds of them fell. The mountain of meat stood up again, and then, as expected, turned into a pile of coke and collapsed. As this cycle continued, more and more coke was piled up, gradually forming an upward slope, and the stacked mountains of monsters were also piled higher and higher, slowly approaching the middle of the city wall. On the airship, Thorn stood on the edge of the guardrail, looking down at the fortress below, his face solemn. From the commanding view from the airship, the entire fortress has been completely enveloped by the black tide, like an isolated island on the sea. The black tide continuously surged out into layers of waves, slamming heavily on the 4 city walls, and then dissipated in waves of thunder. The black tide seems to be doing useless work, but while the waves are breaking, the black tide is gradually rising at a slow speed. More and more monsters are passing through the thunder purgatory behind, and the waves are getting higher and higher. The monster is preparing to completely submerge the entire Black Mountain fortress in this way. General, this monster attack is crazy. If this continues, the fortress's rune defense will not last long. Defending both the upper and lower sides at the same time puts too heavy a load on the energy shield. The voice came from behind. It was Chief Engineer Rebecca. She looked at the scene below with a worried look on her face. She was responsible for most of the defense systems in the fortress, so she knew where the limits of rune defense were. In this way the siege intensity can last up to 6 hours. The defense system of Black Mountain Fortress is actually far more than that, but there are many mechanisms and magic defenses in it, which require the use of elves and wizards to activate. But now, the elves and humans are enemies of each other, and the mages have also parted ways with the Empire. This has left a lot of vacancies in the fortress's defense power. This time, it will inevitably seem a bit dwarfed by such an unprecedented and crazy siege. After listening to Rebecca's words, Thorn's expression remained unchanged and he said solemnly, "It's okay. An agency is an agency after all. It's up to us soldiers to be able to defend the city in the end. By the way, have Kairos and the others left the fortress?" Rebecca, who was at the rear, recalled the glowing purple fire that rushed out from behind the fortress an hour and a half ago, and responded. "We broke out an hour and a half ago." "Okay, send the order to Hubert to close the wall defense and hold the top. I will take care of the frontal defense." "Okay." Rebecca agreed, not worrying about whether the main General Thorn could block the monsters in front of him. Ha ha ha. After hearing Rebecca's promise, Thorn laughed loudly and turned away from the guardrail. His cloak fluttered behind him, creating a red wave. The lava armor on his body began to glow with arrogance, his red hair rose, and his whole person was like a volcano about to explode. The airship is ready to anchor, and the entire Purgatory army is ready to kill all the devils below. The sound was like huge thunder, resounding throughout the spaceship. On the battlefield, the mountain of monster meat at the base of the wall has been piled up to the middle of the wall, and the slope made of charred corpses below is getting higher and higher. In view of the fact that magic cannons cannot attack at this location, many soldiers on the city wall are constantly firing arrows and heavy crossbows, pouring hot oil, and lighting flames to drive away Roshan. Contractors are also mixed in, attacking with all their strength. The dark tide below. Although the defensive methods such as rolling logs and stone smashing used in conventional city defenses were more effective under this kind of offensive, they would also speed up the accumulation of corpses on the slope below, so they were not used. Under such a stalemate, the contractors became more and more frightened as they watched the demonic tide approaching below. They could clearly see the ferocious face of the demon below, its sharp teeth covered with saliva and its blood-red eyes filled with greed. The siege has lasted for almost 3 hours, but the number of monsters is still endless and they are still coming in a steady stream. Suddenly, the thunder light wandering on the fortress wall suddenly disappeared after a burst of flashes, and the boiling thunder baking pan turned into a cold wall again. After the black tide below paused for a moment, it started making a crazy noise. An extremely huge wave began to roll with momentum, and it seemed that it was ready to hit the wall. In contrast to the excited roars below, there are the ashen-faced contractors on the city wall. The previous 3 hours of fighting have filled their hearts with fear. At this time, the sudden disappearance of the city wall's lightning defense has become an overwhelming force. The last straw. It's over, I can't hold it, I can't hold it. Frightened murmurs sounded everywhere. Even if Beijiang and a few others were still trying hard to attack below, they seemed particularly powerless at this moment. The wave below has surged higher and higher, gradually approaching the wall. After losing the lightning defense, the attacks of those arrows, fire oil, and a few contractors were insignificant in the huge number. Finally, the huge and towering mountains of meat had been piled up to the same height as the city wall. Countless monsters rushed over with roars of excitement, and their sharp teeth in their mouths chose to bite people. At the critical moment, more than a dozen huge iron anchors fell from the sky. With huge kinetic energy, the anchors hit the middle of the monster's mountain of meat. In an instant, flesh and blood flew everywhere, the mountain of flesh was smashed into 2 pieces, collapsed, and the monsters scattered one after another. Along with the anchor came dozens of fiery red figures. A violent sea of fire began to explode in the tide of monsters, and a roar resounded through the sky. Little devils, your Grandpa Thorn will play with you. Purgatory Legion, kill. Dozens of fire pillars as red as lava rose into the sky on the battlefield, making all the contractors above blush. Chapter 50. In the small room of the Black Mountain Fortress, Su Yu was sitting on a bench looking at the blank metal in front of him. There was an open small square box on the table. Do you still need a high-level energy source? Ha, just right. After whispering softly, he put the metal back into the square box and put it away properly. He didn't believe a word of what Hubert said about the 10th man theory. This rhetoric was no different from the picture being for reference only. He would only believe it. And judging from Quartermaster Upton's playful expression when handing him the medal, Hubert must have said this to more than just him. The so-called 10th man theory is nothing more than a venture capital investment by Hubert. From the fact that Altria has only had these 9 basic professions for so many years, we can see how difficult it is to find a new path. However, if you can't do it on this continent, it doesn't mean you can't do it in the reincarnation paradise. The countless worlds in the paradise represent countless futures and possibilities. It is just an initial career, and he can afford to gamble. The skills he has mastered now are all of a type with great potential, so what he is most interested in about the blank metal is what Hubert said, that the formation of a new profession will be achieved by extending his own characteristics. In this way, wouldn't it be equivalent to an alternative talent evolution and skill sublimation? What kind of career can he expect to evolve with his plunder talent? As for the energy source, the dragon gem in this world is the best choice. Su Yu's thoughts were swirling as he kept recalling the plot of this world in his mind, and he couldn't help but raise the corners of his lips. Dong dong dong. A fierce knock on the door suddenly sounded, and the knock on the door was urgent, as if there was something important. Su Yu was stunned for a moment, then stood up and opened the door. The person outside the door was Bunir. At this moment, he was fully clothed in armor and his face was solemn. When he saw Su Yu opening the door, he immediately said, "Zhenhuo, urgent military situation, we need to set off immediately." Good. Seeing Bunir's serious expression, Su Yu didn't say much nonsense. After responding, he pretended to pull out the Fangtian painted halberd placed in the space from the corner of the room, and went out to follow Bunir in front. What urgent mission? The monsters are attacking the city in a big way. In addition, there are 2 small groups of monsters of about 10,000 who are preparing to bypass our fortress and go straight to the rear of the Empire. The general ordered that we, the Glow Knights, be responsible for exterminating these 2 monsters. Time is urgent. While the 2 were talking, they were moving at an unhurried pace. In a short time, they had reached the square where the previous banquet was held, which was located in the center of the fortress. At this time, a loud horn sound spread through the entire fortress. Su Yu paused and looked up in the direction of the horn sound. The sound came from the main tower next to the square. In addition to the horn sound, there were also lights. Dazzling red light. This is a signal for the whole city to prepare for war. It means that the monsters have gathered around us, faster than I thought. Bunir beside him also looked up in the direction of the main tower, his voice low. Let's go, don't delay, we have to rush to the west tower to gather with the captain and the others, and then rush out of the beast tide. Now that the signal to prepare for war has sounded, it means that the monsters have completed the encirclement. Although the west side is not the main battlefield, it will not be easy if you think about it. After that, Bunir quickened his pace, and Su Yu quickly followed. In the boiling and flowing crowd, 2 figures separated the tide and headed west first. The Black Mountain Fortress was very large, but Su Yu and Bunir were far superior to ordinary soldiers. With their feet and full strength, they had already rushed to the West City Tower in less than 10 minutes. At this time, a large number of soldiers and horses had gathered in front of the gatehouse, and soldiers continued to arrive from behind. However, most of them are ordinary cavalry. Because the Radiant Knights have extremely high requirements for the quality of the cavalry, the full establishment only has 800 members. Now the number of members is only about 500. After the 2 passed through the ordinary cavalry group on the periphery, in front of them was the Glow Knights who were ready to go and lined up in neat lines. They were faster and had already completed the assembly. At the front was Kairos holding a silver gun. Seeing the arrival of the 2 men, Kairos looked calm, but there was still a flash of fluctuation in his eyes when he glanced at Su Yu. "Captain, the person has been brought back successfully." Facing Bunir's salute, Kairos nodded slightly, then looked to Su Yu aside and handed over a coat of arms. "With the general's approval, from today on, you will be a member of the Radiant Knights. This is your coat of arms. Keep it. As you command, Commander." Su Yu didn't ask stupid questions like why he didn't ask for his opinion beforehand, but decisively held his fist with his right hand. After a military salute, he solemnly took the coat of arms from Kairos with both hands. As soon as he got the coat of arms, there were several the Paradise prompt pops up. "You have joined the Human Empire camp, Knights of Radiance. The current reputation of the Knights is friendly. You obtain the emblem, Brilliance of Glow, after wearing it, life recovery speed plus 10%, movement speed plus 10%. Rubbing the coat of arms in his hand, Su Yu's heart moved slightly. "This thing is quite effective. Return to the team." Seeing that Su Yu decisively took over the coat of arms, Kairos stopped talking and gave the order to return to the team before returning to his stand and waiting quietly. Su Yu quickly returned to the team with Bunir. As soon as he got close to the team, a warhorse came close to him and rubbed his arm affectionately with its head. This is the horse that Su Yu rode in the last plane battle. It still remembers the taste of Su Yu. After saying "good horse," Su Yu touched its head with his hand, then got on his horse and stood beside Kairos with Bunir. Behind them were the Knights of Radiance, all standing with guns in hand, ready in formation. Time passed minute by minute while waiting. A few minutes later, a cavalryman came from behind and said respectfully to Kairos, "Inform Commander Kairos that a total of 1,000 fortress cavalry have been assembled." Kairos nodded, then stepped forward a few steps, raising the spear in his hand, and a glow bloomed on his body. "Everyone is ready, I am waiting to face the demonic tide and take the lead. Step up to the edge." The uniform friction of armor made a sound, and the sound of fine horse hooves gradually sounded, and an unstoppable spirit began to condense with Kairos as the tip of the spear. "Knights, charge into battle! Kill!" The sound of killing gradually faded away, and was replaced by the thunderous sound of horse hooves. The ground began to tremble, and with the intention of crushing all killings, a shining silver arrow flew out from the west gate of the fortress. On the plain, long silver arrows and black waves lined up at both ends, colliding with each other at extremely fast speeds. The moment the two met, a bloody flower of coquettishness bloomed at the front of the black tide. Then it quickly stretched into a bloody vertical strip, which was extremely obvious in the black wave. In the tide of monsters, Su Yu's ears could no longer accommodate any sound except the roars of monsters. Everything he saw was filled with all kinds of monsters with their fangs snarling in anger. The instinctive warning of beasts was not heard for a moment after rushing into the monster tide. "Stop!" The halberd in his hand vibrated lightly, and he swung left and right, constantly pushing away the monsters in front of him. In this situation of 2-by-2 confrontation, killing the enemy was no longer the first priority. The primary goal now is to open a bloody path and rush out of the beast tide, and under such a dense charging beast tide, as long as the enemy is unbalanced and falls to the ground, it will be directly trampled into pulp. Chapter 51. During the charge, the passage of time became inaudible, and the pace of the horses beneath them never stopped. They seemed to have rushed far away in the tide of beasts, but they seemed to always be standing still in the tide of beasts. There are always only a steady stream of monsters coming at him. Without any reference, the only thing that can make Su Yu feel changed is the Fangtian painted halberd in his hand. It was constantly transmitting stronger and stronger power to him, and the overlord effect of the halberd reminded him of the number of creatures killed all the time. The pressure coming from the front began to increase. It was Kairos's strength that was failing. He was leading the way in the beast tide, which was consuming his physical strength every minute and second. Su Yu gently pinched the horse's belly, and the horse under him understood it, and its speed suddenly began to increase until it jumped over Kairos in front of him. Since they didn't know how long it would take for the beast tide to break through, they had to conserve their energy appropriately, so he and Kairos took turns to rush into the formation. This is already the second rotation. As for the other members of the Knights, they cannot assume the forward position. In this environment, the only ones who can maintain a crushing attitude against the monsters are Su Yu and Kairos, and Bunir is also inferior. One chip. And compared to staying behind Kairos, Su Yu enjoys the feeling of being the first to be attacked and faced with enemies, so that he can unleash the unparalleled violent power in his body. The leaping of the horse under him seemed to be integrated with his heartbeat. After putting a cavalry saddle on the horse, his equestrian skills improved by leaps and bounds. The 4-point mount compatibility bonus made Su Yu and the horse under his crotch become one. Every forward leap of the war horse can bring him surging power. The power is transmitted from the war horse, transformed by the waist, and finally gathered in his arms. The strength in the body makes the strength like a rushing river wave. Continuously passed it to Fang Tian's painted halberd in his hand. The halberd began to buzz. Su Yu slowly opened the corners of his mouth, veins popped out in his arms, and waved. The simplest movements carry the most arrogant power. The halberd pulled out an extremely obvious white gas in the air, traveling in all directions. Violent blasts accompanied by howling wind and waves splashed a wave of blood in front of the knights. 13 points of strength attribute plus 5 points of Overlord's blessing from Fang Tian's painted halberd plus 2 points of strength judgment brought by the brutal effect. Nearly 20 points of power were fully exerted by Su Yu. All the monsters within 3 meters in front were like black balloons filled with plasma. They exploded instantly after coming into contact with the halberd in Su Yu's hand. No matter whether it was a huge ogre or a sturdy orc cavalry blocking the road ahead, under the crushing effect of Fang Tian's painted halberd and the all-pervasive power of Beng Jin, they were all reduced to a mass of tiny pieces and their flesh was reduced to pieces. If Kairos's path-opening style is penetrating and indomitable, then Su Yu's path-opening style is violent and invincible. A few minutes ago, under the leadership of Kairos, the knights shuttled through the black tide like a sharp arrow, destroying everything. A few minutes later, under the leadership of Su Yu, the knights turned into a brutal battering ram and rampaged through the black tide. The blood and minced meat all over the sky soaked from the tips of the knights' spears, completely dyeing the silver glow into a sticky blood color. Kairos, who was behind Su Yu, couldn't help but slightly dilate his pupils as he looked at the bloody storm in front of him. He actually became stronger again, with this growth rate. After the bloody storm raged for half an hour, its efficiency began to slow down. Even with Su Yu's physical strength, after wielding it with all his strength in the demonic tide for half an hour, he was still slightly out of breath. Kairos from behind had already stepped forward, and Su Yu was about to slow down. Suddenly paused. The front was finally no longer endless black, but began to have a touch of yellow, and the beast tide was coming to an end. Kairos on the side also saw a flash of yellow at the end of his line of sight. The two sides glanced at each other in unison, expressing the same meaning in their eyes and working together. Food fire, start! Su Yu took the lead in exerting his force, and the boiling fire rose up from behind. Along the route of the knight's charge, a majestic purple fire snake was formed above the black tide all over the mountains and plains. The fire snake swam its head and tail at an extremely fast speed and swam above Su Yu, firmly covering the top of the knights and turning the entire sky into a noisy and boiling sea of fire. Go! Following Su Yu's order, the fire snake rushed towards the wave of monsters in front of the knights with the courage to swallow the sky and the earth. After the majestic purple snake and the black tide exchanged, it turned into a stream of light and disappeared inch by inch. At the same time, it took away countless monster armors that had been turned into burnt powder. The moment the fire snake dissipated, the knights led by Kairos had already crashed into the group of monsters that had just been ravaged by the fire. Under the glow. Keep moving forward. Along with the loud shouts that resounded through the clouds, the knights' bodies glowed brightly in an instant, tightly wrapping all the cavalry, forming a genuine silver arrow, tearing apart the beast tide. The speed of the long silver arrow is getting faster and faster, smashing all obstacles along the way. Kairos is located on the arrow. Apart from raising the spear in his hand, there is no other action. He just keeps speeding up, and then speeding up. Facing these unarmored enemies in front of them, the knights did not need to make any defense at all. Their pure flesh and blood bodies were as brittle as tissue paper in the face of the light. Finally, the beast tide is coming to an end, and a towering mountain of flesh begins to appear in front of it. In order to stop this cavalry, this is the last effort of the monsters. Just like the scene in the siege, countless monsters are entangled with each other. Together they used flesh and blood and corpses to form the last barrier, a magnificent and ferocious mountain of flesh. In the black endless tide of beasts, under the apocalyptic sky covered by black clouds, a huge and strangely beautiful mountain of flesh is growing rapidly, with countless gaping teeth and monster limbs with sharp claws. Stretching out from the mountain of flesh in front of you, facing the charging knights. Since the blades and armor have disappeared, use sharp teeth and claws, and among the dense limbs, there are pairs of blood red, full of rich with greedy and appetitive eyes, they were staring at the cavalry in front of them all the time. Their eyes were greedy and salivating, and the roar that seemed to pierce the eardrums was continuously coming from the inside of Roshan, entangling the knights. Facing this scene that made people crazy, Kairos remained expressionless. He retracted the spear in his hand, and all the light began to condense. A figure leaped high towards the Roshan mountain in the bright light. Under the rolling and roaring black clouds in the sky, it looked like an epic oil painting. Breaking the military. Boom! The spear suddenly flew out, and the slender gun barrel drove an infinite glow and collided with the mountain of meat. A beam of light reached the sky and the earth between the black clouds and the beast tide. The mountain of meat was like foam in the sun, wailing and melted by the glow. After delivering this unprecedented blow, Kairos collapsed directly. Suyu, who was behind, quickly moved forward, picked up Kairos who was about to fall to the ground with one hand, and pulled out the silver gun that was still intact on the ground with the other hand, followed by a roar. The knights, the vast plains in front of them. The beast tide has broken, and the road ahead is smooth. Chapter 52. Behind the human empire, in a mountain forest full of greenery. The originally peaceful atmosphere was quickly eroded by blood and fire after the arrival of a group of monsters. Hucky! Hucky! The sound of rapid breathing and running spread, and a large group of chaotic monsters scattered in the mountain forest and fled, leaving behind a large number of cold corpses and fishy blood along the way. Put! A cold male voice came from behind the group of monsters, and the shout fell, followed by the continuous whistling of the air, and dozens or hundreds of silver light and shadows shot into the group of monsters with fierce roars, and they were thick and long. Spear! With the blessing of huge strength, the spear easily penetrated all obstacles along the way, cutting off branches and penetrating tree trunks. The last thing it penetrated was the body of the monster running around. After a wave of spears were fired, nearly a quarter of the monsters in front were pierced by the spears. Those who were more lucky died on the spot, while those who were less lucky were directly torn into two pieces at the waist, with their remaining limbs flying around. The intestines dragged the floor, and screams were heard everywhere. Large pieces of blood-stained meat splashed out, covering the green in the mountain forest with a dazzling red, and the beautiful green field suddenly turned into a bloody hell. Looking at the cruel scene in front of him, Suyu remained unmoved. He waved Fang Tian's painted halberd in his hand, and a silver ring passed around him. After a few breaths, all the trees within a radius of 3 meters fell to the ground amidst the roar. The field of vision suddenly broadens. In the way, the rest of the people spread out to encircle and suppress all the monsters within sight, leaving no one behind. Yes. The sound of the promise fell to the ground neatly, and the cavalrymen wearing armor and holding guns filed forward from Suyu's left and right, killing one after another towards the defeated group of monsters in front. Approximately where we are now. After hearing Suyu's question, Bunir stepped forward a few steps behind him, looked at the map in his hand, recalled the route they had taken so far in his mind for a moment, and responded. Ahead is the town of Kedra, which is also one of the key targets of monsters. There are a large number of civilians there. We have cleaned up about 4,000 monsters along the way. Most of the rest should gather in Kedra and clear them out. Our mission this time is almost over. Taking the map from Bunir's hand, Suyu roughly estimated that from here to Kedra town, it would take at most 2 hours at the speed of a war horse. Okay, after cleaning up this wave of monsters, all the team members will rush to Kedra to deal with these bugs as soon as possible, rush to the Holy Paradise as soon as possible, and gather with Kairos. Returning the map to Bunir beside him, Suyu looked at the blood flowers that bloomed from time to time in the forest in front of him. It was already the 3rd day since they broke out from the surrounding beasts. After breaking through the beast tide encirclement before, there were 2 waves of monsters rushing towards the rear of the empire. Kairos divided the knights into 2. One part was led by him to pursue the beast tide on the right, the other part was led by Suyu. Led by Bunir, they chased the beast tide on the left. It is necessary to destroy all the monsters before they cause a lot of damage. Finally, the 2 sides will meet in the sacred paradise of the human capital. After the knights were divided, Suyu's side successfully caught up with the large army of monsters a day ago, and after several formations, they completely dispersed the demonic tide, and wiped out most of the monsters. The tens of thousands of demonic tides, the knights were all being able to penetrate smoothly. This mere 5,000 demon tide did not cause any trouble to Suyu and the others at all. However, due to the difference in numbers, after the monsters fled in all directions, the number of knights could not completely encircle them, and they could not complete the task in one battle, allowing many monsters to escape. After they chased and killed the monsters for a day, there were now about 1,000 monsters left. But the problem is not big. Kedra in front is the only large-scale human gathering point on this path. From the monster's mind, as long as their purpose is to cause damage to the human rear, they will definitely gather around Kedra town. Time passed slowly, and the knights were not slow to clean up the monsters. After 10 minutes, all the monsters scattered in the mountains and forests had been killed. If the mountains and forests did not block the view, the efficiency would be higher. When all the cavalry returned, Su Yu raised his halberd high and pointed directly in the direction of Kedra. Everyone marches urgently, target Kedra. Kedra town is a famous town at the rear of the empire. It has a quiet environment and rich products. Although it is not very large, it can be said that it is full of talents. Many well-known mercenaries and adventurers came out of this town and eventually became famous on the mainland. But with the arrival of a wave of wandering monsters, Kedra's long-lasting peace ended, and an unthinkable disaster suddenly struck. Although it was noon, as the monster approached, thick clouds turned the originally blue sky into a foggy and dark cloud. In the square in the center of the town, many residents looked at the suddenly gloomy sky, and their hearts became more and more depressed. Why did it suddenly become overcast? Is it going to rain heavily? This cloud feels so scary, as if it's going to hit me next moment. While everyone was whispering to the sky, a carriage hurriedly came from outside the square. A young boy in the carriage started to shout loudly as soon as he stopped the carriage in the square. Everyone, listen to me. Many monsters are coming here. Go quickly, leave the town, and don't bring anything with you. After the words fell, without waiting for anyone to reply, the young man tightened the reins and drove the carriage out of the square again. He had to go to other places to make notifications. In the square, after the young man's carriage drove away, everyone realized what was going on and started shouting like an exploding boiling pot. In the crowd, a sturdy middle-aged man supported an old man and asked hesitantly. Dad, what Lambert said, what do you think, is it really a monster attacking? But the monster. The old man looked at the dark clouds in the sky, the look on his face was gloomier than the sky. Lambert would not joke about such a big thing. Moreover, when the black dragon was still there a long time ago, the sky on the mainland was like this. I am afraid that the monster is really coming. Ahem. Listen to Lambert, organize people and leave the town. After listening to the old man's reply, the middle-aged man no longer hesitated and began to give instructions. Everyone, be quiet. Listen to this kid Lambert. Let's leave the town for safety first, and then come back if nothing happens. Brother Cullen is right, don't delay, please tell everyone to leave as soon as possible. Yesterday, I seemed to have heard that there were traces of monsters appearing in the wilds of my relatives. Anyway, I would rather believe that they are there than not. As a well-respected professional in the town, after the middle-aged Cullen spoke, the crowd in the square began to calm down, and many more rational people also spoke in agreement. 10 minutes later, the residents of the town rushed out of the town in groups under the command of some people. The legend of the Black Dragon has not disappeared. Everyone also knows that monsters are terrifying, and no one will take their own lives as a joke. Not long after the crowd left the town, they heard bursts of thunder-like noises coming from the front, and the team suddenly became commotion like a frightened bird. Monster, it's a monster. What should I do? There are monsters attacking from the front. In the midst of the chaos, Cullen calmed down. Compared to the ordinary residents in the team who had stayed in Kedra town all their lives, he had also traveled on the mainland for a few years. Listening to the movement in front of him, he could naturally tell that it was not a monster. Everyone, be quiet. Don't panic. This is not a monster, but the sound of cavalry. It should be the knights of the Empire coming to destroy the monsters. Sure enough, not long after Cullen finished speaking, a cavalry team of hundreds of people appeared at the end of the road. The thunderous sound was the uniform sound of horse hooves. And the cavalry galloped all the way, and after approaching the residents' group, they all stopped when the leading cavalry gave a low shout. Orders and prohibitions were issued, and order was maintained. Cullen, who was at the front of the team, his eyes lit up. With such discipline, it seemed that the cavalry that came had a good background. After thinking about it, he hurried forward. Just a few steps closer, a strong smell of blood hit his face from the leading cavalry. Cullen paused, and the constant fear from his biological instinct made him dare not take another step forward. Looking up, the armored war horse is tall. Cullen's height of just over 1.9 meters is only at the same level as his shoulders. When the war horse breathes, what comes out of its nose is not moist mist, but wisps of blazing heat. Mars, his eyes then moved up. Different from the heavily armed cavalry behind them, the leading general was wearing a black wolf-howl cloak with dried blood stains on it. He was holding a shaped weapon. The gorgeous, long-handled weapon full of evil aura is intimidating. Su Yu glanced at the cowering figure under him. It was not surprising. He had killed too many monsters in the past few days, and the evil aura in his body was getting stronger and stronger. It was difficult to contain him for a while. He was like a human beast along the way. Avoid them all. But the residents of Kedra. The cold voice came from above, which also made Cullen recover from his fear. He quickly lowered his head and replied respectfully. General, we are all residents of Kedra. We all fled the town to take refuge because there were monsters attacking from behind. The rear, I understand. Bunir, arrange 20 ordinary cavalry to protect these civilians. Others, follow me to kill the enemy. Yes. The cold voice disappeared, and the sound of galloping horse hooves sounded instead. Only then did Cullen feel that the strong evil aura surrounding his body disappeared, and he dared to raise his head again. Is this the general of the Empire? What a terrifying deterrent! Looking at the cavalry galloping ahead, Cullen's thoughts surged. Suddenly, the figure of the young man driving the car flashed in his mind, and he couldn't help shouting to the cavalry ahead. General, there is a young man named Lambert behind the town who is covering our escape. General, if you encounter him, please take care of him. Good. Cullen's scream was blown away by the strong wind, and the strong wind brought back a cold reply. The voice was still cold, but it suddenly calmed down his anxious heart. Looking at the more than 20 cavalrymen guarding him around him, and recalling the fierce general he had glimpsed before, he slowly let out a long breath. Phew, I'm saved, that's great. Drive, drive. In the jungle behind Kedra town, a carriage was galloping on the trail. Lambert held the reins and kept shouting. At his feet, 2 puppies, one yellow and one brown, were looking around with their heads on both sides of the carriage. Finally, everyone in the town has been notified. Everyone should have left the town. It's time for me to run for my life. It's really strange. How come so many monsters suddenly appear? While thinking about it casually, Lambert's driving speed did not slow down at all, but became faster and faster. He had walked this road 1,000 times if not 800 times, and he was very familiar with it. After making a smooth drift, the carriage drove onto a straight road. After crossing this straight road, it would be out of the jungle, and it would be much safer then. When he was driving halfway, the little yellow dog at his feet suddenly started barking. Lambert was startled and turned his head to look. He saw more than 10 flaming arrows flying straight from the right, piercing him straight. In the large carriage behind the carriage, a large number of wooden barrels and white cloths were caught in the flames and burst into flames. The carriage was filled with flammable materials, and the fire spread quickly. Feeling the scorching temperature behind him, Lambert wailed in his heart. My carriage! But wealth is never worth his life. After lamenting, Lambert reined in his horse and jumped out of the car. 2 puppies, one yellow and one brown, also jumped off the car one after another. Even if there is an emergency deceleration, the carriage is still not slow. Jumping out of the speeding carriage is not easy, but fortunately there is mostly soft turf under the body, which plays a good buffering role. In addition, it has been used since I was sensible. Because he had been pestering Uncle Cullen in the town to practice martial arts, Lambert's skills were pretty good. After rolling twice on the turf, he landed safely. Glancing at the flaming carriage that had rolled over behind him, Lambert's face fell, but the focus was no longer on the carriage. The moment he landed, he saw numerous monsters surrounding him. Lambert glanced around and quickly hid under a big tree next to him. Unfortunately, it didn't have much effect. The monster had already determined his position when he jumped off the carriage. With a loud noise, the overturned carriage was kicked to pieces by a big foot. Amidst the flying debris of the fire, an ogre more than 2 meters tall and covered in heavy armor slowly walked out, surrounded by hundreds of short goblins holding scimitars. A group of monsters surrounded Lambert under the big tree, and he was in a dilemma and on the verge of despair. Dessert. It's human. Whatever, it's delicious. The goblins kept shouting, and pairs of greedy eyes scanned Lambert's body, making him shiver all over. Lambert backed away slightly and looked at the big man in front of him with a smile. "Boss, I just saw a lot of people heading over there in groups." After an emotional performance, the ogre remained indifferent. Instead, the surrounding goblins slowly approached with scimitars in their hands. Looking at the screaming and surrounding monsters in front of him, Lambert tightly clutched the wooden dagger behind him, which was better than nothing, and his heart was filled with despair. The goblins in front of him were getting more and more aggressive, and just as Lambert was about to be torn apart by a swarm of monsters, 2 wine bottles suddenly fell from the sky and hit the goblin who was dancing the most happily on the head with precision, knocking him unconscious. Lambert was stunned and looked up, only to see an iron anchor falling from the air. With a violent whistling sound, the anchor fell to the ground and smashed several monsters among them. Then the iron chain connecting the anchor slammed. With a sudden pull, the anchor tore through the air and swung it into a semicircle again, smashing all the monsters around Lambert to pieces. In the chaos, Lambert's face was filled with joy. He dodged the huge mace swung by the ogre after seeing that the situation was not going well. Then he seized the opportunity and relied on the tree trunk behind him to take advantage of the force and jumped violently, firmly grasping the anchor in the air. After being grabbed by Lambert, the anchor also stopped waving, and began to rise slowly, breaking away from the circle of monsters below. Phew, finally saved. Looking at the monster below, Lambert breathed a long sigh of relief. Just as he was relaxing, a series of muffled thunder sounded from below, and Lambert took a closer look. I saw dozens of silver light shadows suddenly flying out of the jungle, heading towards the group of monsters surrounding him below. The light shadows fell to the ground, and in an instant countless blood foam and residual limbs splashed, and dozens of large pits exploded on the grass. Holding a silver spear, there were flesh all around. Most of the monsters were shot by this wavelength spear, and they exploded cleanly. After the spear landed, dozens of cavalrymen rushed out from the direction where the spear was fired. The first one was particularly conspicuous. Different from the silver armor of the cavalry behind him, he was all black and led the way. After approaching the surviving monsters, he waved the air wave with the long-handled weapon in his hand. Suddenly, blood and flesh exploded all over the sky, splashing out a piece of minced meat. Along with the previous giant ogre, which was more than 2 meters high, only minced meat was left on the ground. With one blow, there was no living thing in front of him, and Lambert's scalp felt numb when he looked at it from above. Suddenly, as if he was aware of the sight above, the Black Knight beside the big tree suddenly raised his head, and a pair of purple eyes looked at Lambert hanging on the anchor above. The knight was stunned for a moment, and then the sword in his hand struck straight down on the big tree in front of him. The crescent moon at the front of the weapon hooked the tree. The knight used the force to jump up high, more than 6 meters high, and held it firmly with one hand. Anchor in the sky. 2 pairs of eyes, one big and one small, looked at each other. Lambert swallowed hard and curled up. The knight looked at the young man in front of him up and down, and then spoke calmly, with a cold tone. Lambert. Chapter 53. Bunir, what should we do now? In the mountain forest, a group of knights looked at each other, one large and one small, being taken away by the anchor. In the front row of the queue, Bunir looked up and squinted at the large airship looming in the clouds above the anchor, and his expression slowly relaxed. Don't worry, with Xinhuo's strength, nothing will go wrong, and I know that airship. The airship of mercenary King Barna is not an enemy. Looking at the direction of travel, it should be the Holy Paradise. How are the monsters in the vicinity being cleared? After confirming that Su Yu was not in great danger, Bunir's hanging heart calmed down. Although Su Yu had not been a member of the Knights for a long time, he had survived and died together several times. With his absolute strength and reliable character, he had already become a member of the Knights. He became the well-deserved second-in-command of the Knights. The stronger the teammates on the battlefield, the greater their own security, especially the Glow Knights who must rush into battle before the battle. They all have an attitude of absolute approval of Su Yu's joining. Since Su Yu is not here now, Bunir is naturally the leader of everyone. After hearing his question, a knight next to him said. Most of the gathered monsters have been cleared away, and some scattered monsters are being dispersed and strangled. Okay, speed up, plow this land again, and then go to the holy heaven to join Kairos and fire. Yes. The cavalry rode away. In the dense forest not far away, several contractors stared at the direction the cavalry left with gloomy eyes. Damn, this group of cavalry came at the right time, and the knight in black from before. I don't remember this scene in the plot. Sister, what should we do now? If we miss this scene, we will be in trouble if we try to properly blend into the protagonist's team. After listening to the shouting of her teammates behind her, the leading female contractor looked down from the anchor above which had disappeared into the clouds. That knight should also be a contractor. It's really amazing. He has only entered the world for a few days and he can reach this status. Contractor? No way. With this kind of strength, it's a pity that the distance is too far and exceeds the range of detection skills. Recalling the domineering and ferocious blow of the Black Knight before, the fat contractor behind him spoke with a faint voice. Chi. The tall, muscular man standing with his arms folded next to him suddenly sneered. Fat man, did you see the weapon that the fierce man was holding in his hand? Fang Tian painted a halberd. Can such a thing exist in this world? In the paradise, the most indispensable thing is all kinds of monsters. The last sentence he said was particularly emotional. After saying that, as if he remembered something, he suddenly turned his head to the tall woman in the front row. Sister, we won't have to compete with that person for food in the future. I can't guarantee whether my shield can withstand the blow just now. If it was a skill just now, I'm afraid it was just a basic attack. The woman glanced at the timid man and spoke in a calm tone. Let's go to the holy heaven first. We'll talk about the rest when we get there. Lambert. On the anchor, when he heard Su Yu's question opposite him, Lambert curled up for a moment, then raised his head sharply. Hey, brother knight, do you know me? Su Yu glanced at Lambert in front of him in surprise. He was worthy of being the protagonist. With his current evil aura, the professional in the town was too scared to speak even before he got close to him. But now even at a close distance, this young man could still look normal. Well, a leading middle-aged man among the Kedra residents mentioned you and asked me to take care of you. After listening to Su Yu's words, Lambert thought for a moment, and then became excited. Middle-aged man? That must be Brother Cullen, haha. It's great that everyone is okay. By the way, Brother Knight, are you sent by the Empire to rescue Kedra? That move just now was so cool. With a bang, all the monsters were wiped out instantly. It's really amazing, but it's just a little bloody. Ignoring the young man next to him who started talking more and more excitedly, even holding the anchor with one hand and imitating a swing with the other, Su Yu glanced at the looming spaceship above and asked Lambert. Do you know whose spaceship is on top? I don't know, but this anchor saved my life in a crisis just now. I think the person who came up there shouldn't be a bad person. I don't care whether it's good or bad for now, but you can't relax your vigilance when facing the unknown. As he said that, Su Yu looked at the ground farther and farther below, and then said. I can't survive if I jump from this height. Let's go to the spaceship first. Be cautious. If there is really danger, remember to hide behind me. Do you understand? Meeting Su Yu's eyes, Lambert nodded repeatedly. After Su Yu called out his name before, he also understood that Su Yu jumped on the anchor to save him, and he felt a little moved in his heart. Understood, Brother Knight, but I am also capable of fighting and will not cause you any trouble. Besides, I also have 2 helpers. As if he was afraid that Su Yu wouldn't believe it, he waved the wooden dagger in his hand as he spoke, and then swayed his 2 calves, with 2 puppies, one yellow and one brown, hanging on them. Looking at Lambert's movements, Su Yu nodded lightly. Although Lambert looked weak now, he had great potential and was growing very fast. As the protagonist, he would have many achievements in the subsequent dragon-slaying battle. Small force. While the 2 were talking, the anchor they were holding on suddenly began to shake violently, as if someone was pulling the chain violently from above. Su Yu only felt his hands tighten, and then his whole body followed the anchor and jumped high, flying straight to the position above the airship. His body suddenly floated into the air. Looking at the deck below, Su Yu's expression remained unchanged. He first released the Fangtian painted halberd in his right hand and then the halberd fell. Under the action of gravity, the tip of the halberd's tail was inserted into the deck and stood firmly. And then with a muffled sound, Su Yu followed the halberd and landed heavily on the deck, with his legs slightly bent into a squatting position to alleviate the impact of the fall. The anchor thrown up fell back to the bottom of the spacecraft, and the trembling iron chain rattled continuously. Su Yu stood up from the crouching position on the deck, put down Lambert held in his right hand, and then carefully scanned the surroundings. This airship flying among the clouds was covered with thick fog, and the visibility on the deck was extremely low. It was difficult to see clearly anything more than 2 meters away. Lambert still remembered his previous instructions. After landing, he stood behind Suyu and looked around as well. Hey, I'm lucky. I caught 2 fish. Well, the small one is a salted fish. A somewhat frivolous tone spread on the deck. Lambert was startled, and he picked up a wooden sword on the deck and started to defend himself. Who are you? Come out quickly. Well, it seems that this salted fish is still a warrior with no hair on his head, and a night full of evil spirits. The frivolous voice sounded again, but started to become a little serious in the second half of the sentence. Lambert was still looking around, while Suyu turned around and stared quietly at the fog behind him. The owner of the voice was in this direction. Perception is pretty good. Accompanied by the sound, a broad figure walked out of the mist. It was a little giant more than 2 meters tall, and its size was not inferior to that of the ogre among monsters. Chapter 54. On the broad airship deck, the fog was hazy. Suyu looked at the little giant pushing away the fog and approaching slowly, and cupped his hands. Uninvited, sorry to bother you. Quite polite. The giant looked Suyu up and down, and then looked at Lambert, who was still on guard with his wooden sword. Humph, that's it for this night. You kid, I saved you, so you just pointed it at me with a wooden sword. It seems you need some training. The giant's menacing look scared Lambert back again, and he hid behind Suyu reflexively. The giant's eyes also fell on Suyu's face, and he frowned slightly. What, this guy is your little brother? Suyu shook his head. He could feel that this giant had no ill intentions. As Lambert's future master, he was just a little interested in Lambert after seeing his movements on the spaceship. He was preparing to take the test. Bert. Suyu had no interest in being a villain for no reason. He reached out and picked up Lambert from behind him and put it in front of him. Didn't you say that you are also capable of fighting? Go ahead and defeat him. After saying that, ignoring Lambert who was a little stunned, Suyu took a few steps back, folded his hands on his chest, and looked at the 2 people opposite him, one high and one low. As you wish. The giant gave Suyu a look that said he was a good boy, and then looked down at Lambert with a grin. Come on, let me teach you some manners first. Amidst the whistling sound, the wooden sword in the giant's hand slashed down at Lambert, and the wooden sword he held high to block fell to the ground lightly. Then there were a few more random swings of the sword. Lambert had no power to fight back and kept retreating after being slashed. The difference in size between the 2 sides was so great that they were not on the same level at all. Oh, fight back. That's all you have. Another side shot, Lambert was shot directly to the ground. Slowly watching Lambert crawl and hide in the gap between the 2 wooden boxes, a trace of disappointment flashed in the giant's eyes, and he easily broke the chain in front of him with his wooden sword, taunting him non-stop. Tisk, you are so weak. The iron chain was broken and the wooden box that was bundled began to slide. Lambert's eyes lit up and he reached out to grab the broken iron chain. Then his body was dragged by the sliding wooden box away from the giant. The giant was not in a hurry, his eyes followed Lambert on the deck, and he continued to speak in a cat-and-mouse manner. This isn't exciting enough. If you beat me, I'll give you a real sword. What do you think? After hearing this, Lambert, who had already slid some distance away, let go of the iron chain. After a fancy rotation, he stood up, standing tall and straight, holding the wooden sword straight, the hilt in his hand close to his ear, and the tip of the sword pointed directly at the giant. Then I want the best. Unfortunately, the slogan was loud, but the gap in combat effectiveness could not be made up by enthusiasm. After Lambert started to take the initiative to attack, the battle situation did not change at all. He slashed with all his strength, but was easily blocked by the giant with his forearm. With one wave, Lambert was carried away directly. That's not okay. Why don't you tickle me? With another taunt, Lambert stood up again and gritted his teeth. He jumped several times onto a towering wooden box. Then he used his legs to exert force and leaped high into the sky, splitting the Huashan mountain with all his strength. Hey! The wooden sword swung down hard with gravity, but it only cut through the thick fog in front of him. The giant who had already taken half a step back looked at the handsome little boy landing below, and twitched the corners of his mouth. Hee hee! After landing, Lambert's eyes twitched slightly when he heard the shouting from above. After looking around, he rolled his eyes and ran away quickly, hiding in the surrounding fog. Hey, if you want to learn from me, then you have to pay some tuition. Glancing at the white fog around him, the giant's ears twitched slightly, and then he used the wooden sword in his hand to pick up the iron chain on the deck. The iron chain was raised high, which happened to trigger the thunder in the clouds, accompanied by the sound of thunder and thunder. The chains spread, and then a black and smoking figure flew out of the mist and landed in front of the giant. Haha, it turned into grilled fish. After flipping the little man in front of him, the giant took a light sniff. It smells really good, grilled fish? Grilled fish. Dead? The tuition hasn't been paid yet. He poked Lambert, who was lying down a few times, but there was no movement. The giant was a little dazed. When the giant was in a trance, Lambert, who was lying on the deck, suddenly stood up and kicked the giant in the face with a spinning kick. The giant quickly raised his hands to block, but was kicked back a few steps. After putting down his arms, he saw the tip of a wooden sword reaching his throat. "You're cheating." He spoke unconvincing words, but the satisfaction in the giant's eyes was real. "The cheating earned me a real sword." Lambert, holding the sword, spoke in a high-spirited tone. "Are you sure you won?" The giant under the sword looked at Lambert's tone with amusement, and then his Adam's apple moved slightly. Roar! Violent sound waves exploded with the giant as the center. The figure was thrown far away along with the surrounding wooden boxes, and fell heavily among the scattered wooden boxes. The exaggerated sound waves were still spreading, and this wave of war roars actually dispersed within 100 meters. All the fog and clouds were gone, and the bright sunshine shone on the spaceship, and the deck instantly opened up. Pa, pa, pa! Applause rang out on the deck. It was Su Yu who had been watching the show in the corner. Although this battle was a waste of time, he still saw some clues. The giant turned his head and looked at Su Yu, who was applauding. He tightened his grip on the sword and said with a smile. "It's just not enough, why don't we practice some practice?" Bending down to pick up the wooden sword that Lambert had thrown away before, Su Yu stepped forward and smiled a little wantonly. "Okay, let's practice." Su Yu danced a sword flower in the center of the deck, and then spoke. "But since you and that kid both bet on swords before, why don't we bet on something before we start fighting?" "Oh, that's interesting. So what do you want to bet on?" The giant's eyes began to look serious when he looked at the knight on the other side, and the evil aura on the other side made him feel a little uncomfortable. Su Yu took out a piece of fire-patterned steel, and the purple fire rose in his hand. In a moment, the steel melted into reddish-silver water, and then the silver water rolled and shaped in his hand, slowly solidifying into a small dagger. Su Yu let go of the dagger in his hand, and the dagger naturally fell down. The blade penetrated straight into the deck, leaving only the hilt outside. The deck around the hilt began to darken slightly, as if what was inserted in it was not a dagger, but a piece of wood. Iron. In this way, if you beat me, I will help you make any weapon or protective gear. It's up to you to choose. But if you lose, how about teaching me the battle cry you just used? The giant looked at the slightly reddish dagger on the deck, his eyes narrowed, he swallowed imperceptibly, and responded. "Haha, deal." As soon as he finished speaking, a big sword struck down angrily. Boom! 2 wooden swords were exchanged in the air, wood chips were flying, and 2 pairs of eyes, one high and one low, looked at each other. "The strength is not bad." Feeling his slightly trembling arms, Su Yu responded. "Nothing better than you." Even though both sides were using wooden swords and could not use their full strength, the force coming from the giant sword still exceeded him. Su Yu exerted force on his waist and abdomen, his whole body shook, and he violently bounced the wooden sword he was holding high. The giant felt a continuous force coming from the sword, and couldn't help but take a few steps back, his body still slightly weakened. Interesting punch. After taking several steps back, the giant struck the ground with his back foot and froze instantly. The entire deck was shaken. Lambert, who was sitting on the deck watching the show, suffered an unthinkable disaster and was thrown away again. And Su Yu, who was standing forward and holding his hand, also felt that the wooden board he was stepping on suddenly turned into a roiling sea wave. Although he did not fall, his steps were messed up, and the sword that was originally stabbed at the door was tilted to the side. After standing still, the giant's body turned slightly, and he dodged Su Yu's head stab. He raised the wooden sword in his hand and struck Su Yu's armpit silently. When the harsh sound of metal knocking sounded, and Su Yu threw it high. After landing, he lowered the wooden sword in his right hand and flicked his left arm that had turned silver. At that moment, he could no longer dodge, so he could only use the steel of his left hand to catch it. But even if the opponent was using a wooden sword, it still made his arm numb from the shock. The giant opposite looked at Su Yu's silver left arm and raised his eyebrows slightly. There's a lot of work to do. Feeling the soreness and numbness in his left arm disappear, Su Yu raised his long sword flatly, and the smile on his lips became thicker. Continue. Chapter 55. Bang, bang. On the deck of the airship suspended in the air, two figures crisscrossed each other, and the sound of wooden swords clashing could be heard from time to time. Both are so awesome. Brother Knight and Uncle Giant are both so awesome. Lambert, who was sitting cross-legged in the corner, looked at the battle in front of him. His mouth began to open unconsciously, and his eyes could hardly catch up with the movements of the two people on the field. Not only the speed, the faint ripples in the air and the muffled sound when the wooden sword hit showed that the strength of the two was also beyond his imagination. As for how to use the fragile wooden sword to hit such an effect, it was completely beyond his comprehension. Bang! It was another fight. Although the two were larger and smaller in size, their ferocious momentum was comparable. The sound of fierce wind came, and Su Yu bent down. The blade of the sword was only a few centimeters away from his pupils. He could even clearly see the wooden texture on the sword. The strong wind brought by the sweeping sword blade blew the hair on his forehead. Scattered, but his eyes remained calm. As soon as the big sword swept across his face, Su Yu immediately twisted his waist and raised his right arm forward. The wooden sword in his palm suddenly stabbed upward like a poisonous snake spitting a message, and the tip of the sword went straight to the Tenzong point on the opponent's chest. Sometimes being huge is not entirely an advantage. While the opponent's tall body brings huge pressure, it also gives Su Yu more room to move around. The giant sword swept across. When he realized that Su Yu chose to press down and his body was completely covered by the sword, he realized something was wrong. Losing the enemy's perspective during the battle was not a good thing. But at this time, the sword was not fully exerted, and even if he changed his stance and struck, he would most likely not be able to hit Su Yu who was under the sword, so he quickly got up and fell backwards, lightly lifting his right foot, and slamming his heel onto the ground. When the ground touched the ground, there was a sudden explosion on the deck. Dozens of fine and sharp wooden thorns were knocked out by the giant's kick, and the giant also took advantage of the force of the earthquake to fly out. Sure enough, as soon as he retreated, the tip of a sword suddenly stabbed out from below, aiming directly at the giant's chest, and followed him closely. Even though the giant fell backwards, the wooden sword under him was biting like a poisonous snake that pounced on food. Although the tip of the sword had not yet touched, the sharp airflow from the front had already caused a dull pain in the middle of his chest. In the corner of the deck, Lambert, who was watching the battle, had his pupils dilated and even slowed down his breathing. The tense scene in front of him made him reluctant to even blink. I saw two people fighting in the center of the deck. The giant's upper body fell slightly and flew out backwards. In front of him, Su Yu stabbed forward with his sword, and his body was protruding. One of the two fell backwards, and the other protruded forward. The giant's body in front of him, the tip of the wooden sword was less than an inch away from his chest, and under Su Yu's body, dozens of sharp wooden thorns were close to his face. The two of them received fatal threats almost at the same time. Victory or defeat was instantaneous, life or death was a matter of thought, but the eyes of both sides were equally calm. In an instant, the tip of the wooden sword touched the two of them at the same time, and the crackling sound of the wooden sword cracking and the clanking sound of the metal were heard together. At this time, Su Yu's whole body had turned silver, and the sawdust hit his skin, but there was no harm at all except for a burst of noise. A few sporadic sawdust that hit his eyeballs were directly bounced away by the opening and closing of the tempered eyelids. The tip of the sword that stabbed the giant was firmly blocked by the blade of the wooden sword. The giant had already begun to hold the sword back with his arms as he stepped back. In addition, the wooden thorns on Su Yu's side were coming straight towards the door. Even with the steel defense, his speed could not be slowed down. The two of them combined allowed him to successfully retract his sword and defend at the critical moment. Although he prevented the upward thrust, the concentrated penetrating force brought by the forward thrust also caused Su Yu's sword tip to penetrate hard into the broad sword body, and came out through the sword. The sword tip was only half an inch away from the giant's chest. At this time, the two of them were standing opposite each other, with the swords in their hands still connected. The giant looked at a red spot on his chest, opened his mouth, and twisted his arms. Sensing the force coming from the sword, Su Yu also exerted force in the opposite direction. After a crackling sound, the two wooden swords were twisted by two opposing forces and turned into wood chips that scattered all over the sky, forming a cloud of grey mist between the two of them. Before the grey fog could dissipate, a big hand descended from the sky. The fierce air waves tore away the grey fog. The big hand seemed to reach out from the clouds and clawed at Su Yu's head. The early warning sting from his scalp failed to make Su Yu have any fluctuations. Faced with the big hand that was like a cloud dragon probing its claws, he advanced instead of retreating. He lunged up and shook his shoulders. He made a fist with his left hand and pressed down, and stood up with his right arm. Elbow protrusion. Bang! The grey mist around the two men was directly exploded by the majestic force. Su Yu stopped and stood still, while the giant took several steps back. After a few muffled sounds, the giant stood still and shook his numb left hand. The elbow strike just now missed his chest. As soon as Su Yu's elbow broke into the giant's arm, it was caught by a hand. It was wrapped tightly, and its strength was released with a push and a push. Although he caught it, the giant's left hand was not so relaxed. The force penetrated into his bones and penetrated every hole. He now felt that his entire left hand was a little soft. It's this weird energy again. After muttering something, the giant looked at Su Yu opposite, whose body had turned silver. His voice was rich and no longer frivolous. There is something. My name is Barna, what do you call me? King of Mercenaries Barna. Before Su Yu could reply, Lambert in the corner became excited first. Haha, a false reputation, a false reputation. Barna glanced at Lambert who was shouting with satisfaction. After a few words of false politeness, he turned his eyes to Su Yu again. Knights of Radiance, fire! Although he repelled Barna a few steps, Su Yu did not show any proud expression. Although he barely had the upper hand in the previous exchanges, the opponents also took them without any pain. They were still no winner was decided. Knights of Radiance. Hey! I'm familiar with this. I fought with your Knight Commander Kairos a few years ago. You're no worse than him. With that said, Barna looked Su Yu up and down again, this time he was very serious. Okay, now that we've said hello, let's continue. It was just a warm-up before, but this time we have to get serious. Twisting his neck, Barna moved his shoulders, and a faint arrogance began to appear all over his body. Light ripples began to spread out with him as the center. Lambert in the corner began to feel that the air pressure on the deck began to decrease, and the surrounding air it started to become depressing. Just what I wanted. Su Yu was completely unaware of the changes around him. He pursed his lips and grinned, his eyes oozing with purple light. The evil aura that had killed thousands of monsters in a few days was no longer restrained, and a faint chill spread around him. Barna frowned slightly, the evil aura on Su Yu was stronger than he imagined. Almost at the same time, the two explosions merged into one. Su Yu and Barna rushed forward at the same time, and their fists, one large and one small, collided violently. Both of them had domineering and tough personalities, and both adopted a head-on strategy. The roar resounded, and the bursting air waves set off strong whines on the deck, and the iron chains binding the wooden boxes everywhere rattled. Below the spaceship, on the edge of a village, several farmers who were farming stopped what they were doing and looked up. The roaring muffled thunder sounded continuously in the thick clouds. The sky is clear and sunny, but there are no clouds in sight. Why is there still thunder? Chapter 56. Brother, do we want to stop them? If the fight continues like this, I'm afraid they won't be able to hold back. In the cabin of the spaceship, a beautiful girl wearing a red hood and brown high-heeled boots was looking worriedly at the battle on the deck. The girl is slim and graceful. The red dress gently flutters when the girl moves, and the end occasionally brushes the top of the boots that only reach a few inches above the knee. As the girl shakes, a touch of warm, jade-soft and alluring white greasy is revealed. Standing next to the window, the girl is slender and graceful, her posture is graceful, and her fingers like peeling onions are caressing the window lattice. Lian Juan's eyebrows are faintly visible in the red hood, her eyes are like dots of paint, her red lips are protruding on the outside, and her white teeth are fresh on the inside. A strand of white silk hangs down on both sides of her beautiful neck, and her hair is like falling snow. Her eyes are staring at her through the window. Looking out the window, the figures of the two people kept crossing each other. We can't let them continue to fight, otherwise even if they can endure it, this spaceship won't be able to endure it. A gentle voice rang in the girl's ears. The speaker was a ranger in white light armor. He had a handsome face, long golden ear-length hair flowing, his nose was like a gallbladder, and his eyebrows were like ink paintings. He was looking at the fierce battle outside. His brows gradually furrowed. "I'll go out and stop them." After saying that, he walked towards the hatch. Outside the cabin, the fight between the two became more and more intense. At first, they were a little concerned about the surrounding environment, but later on, they became more and more excited. There were scattered sawdust everywhere on the deck. Lambert had gone from watching the show with great interest to shivering in the corner of the wooden box. He looked nervously at the two people on the deck who were in high spirits, and there were two trembling puppies lying at their feet. There was another explosion in the center of the deck, and two fists clashed. Su Yu's fist was violently hit and shook, while Barna's fist was also raised high. In terms of pure strength, Su Yu is not Barna's opponent, but the special vibration of Bengjin will weaken Barna's strength every time he touches it and bounds it away. With each increase and decrease, the two fists will be exchanged. The results are almost the same. It's hard to find such a perfect opponent. The feeling of punching with all your strength is intoxicating. The vibration caused by the punches makes the whole body come alive. This feeling is not only for Su Yu, but also for Barna. Both of them are fighting in a wide-ranging way, relying on their majestic strength and momentum to crush their opponents. Therefore, they both particularly like the feeling of punching to the flesh, which is much more comfortable than hitting wooden stakes or sandbags. Coupled with the two people's equally strong physiques and extreme defense, this kind of fist fight can be regarded as a massage, so the two parties tacitly gave up all fighting skills, just simply boxing, enjoying the spread of the fists colliding. The vibrations throughout the body and the feeling of inner comfort when punching with all your strength. Of course, this was just a tacit understanding between the two people on the court. To people outside the court, the two people on the deck were completely crazy. There was no defense, no skills, and almost no sanity. There was only crazy fist fights. From Lambert's frightened little eyes in the corner of the wooden box, you can see the madness of the two people in the middle of the deck. Sawdust exploded under his feet, and Su Yu flew out, leaving only a pit on the deck. Looking around, there were many more such dense pits. Not only was it Su Yu's side, but Barna's side was also the same. Even because of Barna's size, the crater on his side was a little bigger. The originally smooth spaceship deck had almost turned into a crater. In other words, Barna's airship was made of solid materials, otherwise it would not be impossible for the two of them to hit each other and fall into the interior of the hull below. In the field, the continuous muffled thunder stopped, and two figures flew out. There was a footprint on Barna's chest, and Su Yu's right sleeve had been broken into rags. During the confrontation just now, Barna's position was so suitable that Su Yu couldn't hold back and kicked him out. Barna reacted and slapped Su Yu as he was flying upside down, sending Su Yu flying away. His wide wingspan allowed the range of his palm strike to far exceed Su Yu's. The two fell to the ground and then stood up at the same time. Barna patted the footprints on his chest, and Su Yu casually tore off the obstructive cloth strips on his arms. Their two eyes looked at each other, with nothing but the raging fighting spirit in their eyes. This is not the first time this has happened. Su Yu also has a dusty footprint on his waist. Based on the two people's combat experience, when they find an opportunity during the battle, the body's fighting instinct takes action decisively. Typically, the body is faster than the brain, and the brain before he could turn around, his foot had already been kicked out, so neither of them cared much about it. That is to say, both of them are rough-skinned and thick-bodied. Su Yu has a metallic defense and his body is like fine steel, while Barna is fat and strong, plus there is a faint arrogance all over his body. Both of them belong to the type that cannot be killed easily, so they can carry out this crazy fist fight. After looking at each other, the two sides clashed again, and there were two more craters on the deck. However, before the two sides collided with each other this time, an accident occurred suddenly, and the speed of the two forwards was abruptly stagnant. Su Yu felt that the air around him suddenly became thick and solid, and his body seemed to be stuck in a quagmire. The airflow turned into countless small hands clinging around his body, tearing his strength to pieces. This is telepathy? Just when Su Yu and Barna slowed down at the same time, a golden figure flashed and appeared between them. He spread his hands and raised them flat, with his palms erect, just in time to catch Su Yu, one from the left and one from the right. Yu and Barna clashed with fists. The air waves from both sides met in the middle, blowing the ranger's robes loudly. His long golden hair fluttered in the wind, but the ranger's figure was upright and motionless. His vision helplessly panned from left to right, scanning the large and small figures on both sides that were controlled by him, and said softly, "Can you both calm down?" The ranger's tone was gentle but powerful, and the noisy battlefield became silent after he spoke. Su Yu felt the solid air around him. He felt like a bug trapped in amber. His whole body trembled, and the sound of clicking like broken glass suddenly sounded all around him. Feeling that the restraint around him disappeared, Su Yu gave up the idea of fighting again. He withdrew his fist that was clashing with the ranger's palm. He took a few steps back, looked at the blonde ranger in front of him cautiously, and said, "Your Excellency." The ranger did not stop Su Yu from punching back, but just watched Su Yu's movements quietly. After hearing Su Yu's questions, he smiled gently, and when he was about to speak, there was an explosion on the right, and then the same sound. The sound of glass breaking was that Barna had also escaped from his confinement. "Hey, Geraint, what are you doing? You're having a great time playing. I haven't had so much fun playing for a long time. If your hands are itchy too, wait until I finish beating them first. You get out of the way first, that night boy, let's continue, ha 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 ha, it's really exciting." Chapter 57. After listening to Barna's aggressive speech, Geraint, who was about to introduce him to Su Yu, couldn't help but touch his forehead. After smiling apologetically at Su Yu, he turned to look at Barna on the other side, who was clenching his fists and still fighting. "Barna, before we fight, why don't you take a good look around you?" "Around? Is there anything interesting to see around?" As he spoke, Barna's tone paused, and his eyes gradually became dull as he looked around. "I saw that the originally tidy spaceship had turned into a mess, and the smooth and bright deck had turned into a meteorite landscape full of potholes. Neatly arranged wooden boxes of various types were in pieces, broken into pieces, and scattered with fine wood fragments and broken iron chains. No. My boat, the deck I just waxed." A wail resounded throughout the spaceship. Geraint gently rubbed his shaking ears. He had just been too close to Barna. It must be said that all powerful warriors seemed to have loud voices. Ignoring the movement behind him, he turned back to Su Yu and continued to introduce himself. "Ranger, Geraint. Knights of Radiance, Fire." Geraint's temperament is somewhat similar to Bunir's, the same handsomeness, the same blonde hair, the same gentleness and cheerfulness. But unlike Bunir's sea blue eyes, Geraint's eyes were light red, a color like magnificent rubies. While the two were talking, a clear female voice came from not far away, which also attracted Su Yu's attention. "Don't be afraid. The battle is over. No one will hurt you anymore. Be good." Su Yu looked towards the source of the sound and saw a girl in red hugging a yellow puppy. Her white fingers were stroking the hair on the puppy's head and comforting her softly. "That's my sister Argenta. She prefers these furry little things." Geraint noticed Su Yu's gaze and introduced him from the side. In the corner of the deck, after hearing Geraint's voice, the girl also cast her gaze towards the two of them. The girl raised her eyebrows slightly with cold eyes. After meeting Su Yu's gaze, she nodded lightly, and Su Yu nodded in response. "Xinhuo, I remember that the Radiant Knights are not stationed in the Black Mountain Fortress on the front line? How come they appear behind the Empire?" After briefly introducing his sister, Geraint continued to talk to Su Yu about the previous topic. "Some monsters in Montenegro have been leaked, and we are here to clear them up." Thinking that Geraint and the others had seen the scene of monsters raging in Kedra town before on the spaceship, Su Yu had no intention of concealing his whereabouts and told Geraint the truth directly. Then he pointed at Lambert, who had run over at some point and was looking at him with admiring eyes. Then during the clearing process, in order to save the boy, he was pulled up by Barna. "Is it leaked? It seems like we are running out of time." After listening to Su Yu's words, Geraint murmured a few words in a low voice, but Lambert beside him began to yell again. He looked up at Su Yu with an excited tone. "Brother Xinhuo, you are so strong." Glancing at Lambert, Su Yu also guessed what the kid was thinking. He stretched out his palm to hold down Lambert's head and forced it to face Barna. Barna was currently lying on the deck. "Check out the huge craters. You can't learn from me. Your master is there. Go ahead. He still needs you a good sword. Don't forget it." After pushing his boy in the direction of Barna, Su Yu ignored him. At this time, Geraint, who was murmuring in a low voice, had raised his head and stared at Su Yu with burning eyes. "Xinhuo, are there any monsters rioting in Black Mountain?" Su Yu hesitated for a few seconds and nodded in affirmation. Sure enough, the Black Dragon's recovery process is getting faster and faster. The Black Dragon has revived. Su Yu looked at Geraint in surprise. Of course he knew the Black Dragon's resurgence and even the details of the ranger in front of him, but as the firebrand of the Knights of Radiance, these were not things he should know. Faced with Geraint, who had lived for who knows how many years in front of him, Su Yu will not relax when it is time to perform. Yes, the Black Dragon that once ravaged the continent will resurrect again. The purpose of our trip is to go to the Holy Heaven to remind the King of the Empire that the Black Dragon is about to resurrect and discuss countermeasures. After saying that, Geraint looked at Su Yu, who was still a little confused, and extended his hand to invite him. Let's go to the cabin. I can answer all your questions, but I also hope to get some general information about Montenegro from you. Okay. Su Yu followed Geraint's footsteps and walked towards the cabin. The noise behind him came from time to time. Barna, don't feel bad. These losses will be easily repaired when we get to the Holy Heaven. How much does it cost to repair it? I lost a lot this time. No, that Night Boy also gets half of it. Uncle Barna, don't forget, you owe me a sword, a really good sword. Nonsense, when did I owe you the sword? Barna, we all saw that he defeated you. Haha, Argenta, why are you joking? You are not serious. The outer suburbs of Holy Paradise, as the outer barrier of the imperial capital, have an extremely advantageous geographical environment. There are rich species and a beautiful environment. Covered by rich natural elements, in the depths of the lush forest, in addition to the ordinary animals that can be seen, there are also many dangerous or beautiful strange monsters born here. Due to the characteristics of the outer suburbs, the Knights of the Holy Heaven Guards will clean up the entire outer suburbs every once in a while to eliminate those monsters that are too dangerous or too close to the imperial capital. As for those monsters that are not very dangerous or that live in the depths, the Knights generally don't pay much attention to them. On the one hand, this is done to ensure species diversity. Warcraft is a rare resource, and every part of it has a magical effect. Especially magic crystals, which are in short supply, so fishing for them all is a bad idea. On the other hand, these monsters can play a good role in defending the imperial capital. At least when the enemy wants to besiege the imperial capital on a large scale, the first thing they have to face is the large number of monsters in the suburbs. Although the past few days were not cleaning days for the Knights of the Guard, the entire outer suburbs were still boiling with excitement. As many contractors gathered towards the Holy Heaven, a large number of uninvited guests began to pour in. In a small lake deep in the forest, the originally clear and translucent water began to smell fishy, and a large amount of blood began to spread wantonly in the lake. By the lake, there were all kinds of animal carcasses lying in various directions, with their limbs and internal organs scattered randomly on the grass. The whole scene looked particularly bloody and cruel. In the center of the corpse, a dark and sturdy figure sat. He picked up a nearby deer corpse and brought it to his mouth. The sharp white teeth were crisscrossed up and down, and the smelly blood spurted out in an instant. The figure casually threw away the headless corpse in his hand, and a continuous terrifying chewing sound began to emanate from his head. While chewing, the skin all over his body seemed to turn into liquid. After a wave of fluctuation, the blood splashed all over his body was slowly licked clean by the small black tongues protruding from the skin. After swallowing the last mouthful of brains, the dark figure suddenly muttered to himself strangely. This place is indeed extraordinary. Even the brains of ordinary animals taste very good. We really came to the right place. Main mission? Got it, hurry up and wait until I'm full. It's not the first time I've received those bullshit warnings. What are you afraid of? Animal brains are so delicious, but human ones. It's really drool-worthy. After the words fell, the exaggerated chewing sound spread again by the small lake. Chapter 58. Haha, okay, it's settled, we're tied this time. When we get off the ground, we'll find a spacious place to fight again. In the cabin of the spaceship, Su Yu, Geraint, and other 5 people were sitting around a round table and chatting happily. Among them, Barna's voice is particularly obvious. The look he is looking at Su Yu is quite kind. Although the previous contest between the two ended in vain, Su Yu did not cancel the bet they made before the fight. Instead, he proposed that this contest be a draw, and Su Yu was willing to use any piece of equipment in exchange for his battle cry skill. Barna was quite satisfied with the deal. From what Su Yu had shown before, it could be seen that his forging skills were excellent, and the price for a blacksmith of this level was not cheap. Although his battle cry skill is unique, it is not something too rare. No matter how this deal is calculated, he will not suffer a loss. Even if he doesn't use the things Su Yu forges, he can sell them for a lot of gold coins. He is not financially wealthy now. Although he is the king of mercenaries, he spends money lavishly. In addition, most of the gold coins were used to purchase this airship, and his savings are even more dwarfed. This time, he accompanied Geraint to the imperial capital to discuss the elimination of the Black Dragon. On the one hand, it was out of justice, but more importantly, he planned to make a fortune from this. Looking at the heroic and laughing Barna in front of him, Su Yu was in a good mood. This was a pretty good opponent. He had a particularly comfortable fight just now, and as for this deal, he was even more worthy of the deal. The battle cry skill was very effective in both single combat and group attacks, and it was very suitable for his combat system. Forging equipment is a trivial matter. You can come to me at any time when you have prepared the materials. Weapons and protective gear will do, but they must be made of metal. Forging equipment only consumes some fire. He has accumulated a lot along the way, but the equipment materials can only be obtained from Barna. If the equipment materials are also included, he will suffer a small loss in this transaction. Have a good time. Don't worry about the materials. I know a dwarf blacksmith in the Holy Heaven. His metal materials are absolutely complete. Barna patted his chest and spoke firmly. Hearing the words dwarf blacksmith, Su Yu's interest immediately rose, and he immediately asked Barna. The dwarf blacksmith is quite rare. Barna, if it's convenient, could you introduce me to this blacksmith? Su Yu was deeply impressed by the dwarf blacksmith that Barna mentioned. In terms of forging skills alone, he was one of the best in the world. Su Yu may have relied on this dwarf blacksmith for his lack of extraordinary forging knowledge. No problem. When we get to the Holy Heaven, I will take you to find him. There's me, I'm going to. Uncle Barna, you still owe me a good sword. Hearing Barna mention the word blacksmith, Lambert, who was pestering Geraint with great interest and asking whether the legendary stories about him were true, also became excited and immediately raised his hand. Barna glanced at the excited Lambert and ignored him. Instead, he took Su Yu's arm and started walking out of the cabin. Now that it's settled, I won't wait any longer. Let's go. I'll teach you the battle cry technique first. Su Yu didn't resist. Of course, the sooner he learns skills, the better. When he walked to the door, Barna suddenly paused. He turned to look inside the cabin because Barna ignored him just now, and Lambert, who was a little depressed, coughed and said dully. Hey, that salty fish boy, there's not much difference between teaching one and teaching two. Do you want to learn or not? Ah. Me. Lambert was stunned for a moment, then quickly jumped down from his seat. Learn, learn, learn. I will learn, thank you Uncle Barna, no, thank you teacher. Barna looked at Lambert, who was running towards him with a red face. A smile flashed in his eyes, but he slapped him on the back of the head with his big hand. I didn't agree to be your teacher. Let's see what your qualifications are first. You look dull. Well, I guess you're in doubt. Lambert wasn't angry when he was patted, but he was happy. It wasn't until he heard Barna say that he was stupid that he couldn't help but retort. I learn things very quickly. When I was in town, I learned everything Uncle Cullen taught me as soon as I could. Hey, teacher, brother Xinhuo, wait for me. The three of them walked out of the cabin one after another and headed to the deck. Only two brothers, Geraint and Argenta, were left at the round table in the cabin. Argita still held the puppy in her arms. She looked through the window at the three people on the deck with a gentle smile on her lips. It seems that Barna is very optimistic about this little guy Lambert. Lambert is very talented, agile, flexible in battle, tough, and kind-hearted. He is indeed a good prospect. It is not surprising that Barna values him. Geraint recalled what he had seen before about Lambert's behavior when monsters attacked, and he took the risk to inform all residents that he had no fear when facing monsters, and did not give up resistance even if he was surrounded by monsters. He is tough and upright, but he is never pedantic in battle. He can do sneak attacks, feign death, and other operations at his fingertips. He is indeed a good candidate for being a warrior. After hearing Geraint's comments, Argenta chuckled. It seems that my brother is also very optimistic about that little guy. What about Xinhuo? Xinhuo. After mentioning Xinhuo, Geraint pondered for a moment before continuing. Decisive, ruthless, perseverance, and Geraint thought about the lingering strong smell of blood after approaching Su Yu, and slowly spat out the last two words. Cold-blooded. In short, he is a dangerous person. Although he is a member of the Radiant Knights, he is definitely not a knight. His fighting method must be quite bloody and cruel, even if the opponent is a monster, but this fighting habit represents his absolute disregard for life, a kind of indifference that everything he sees is insignificant. Geraint's evaluation of Su Yu was much more solemn than his evaluation of Lambert. After hearing this, Algeta looked at Su Yu on the deck with a trace of scrutiny. After Geraint noticed Argenta's changes, he quickly followed her. Haha, there is no need to be so vigilant. On a bloody battlefield like Black Mountain Fortress, his character is very suitable for survival. He is a very good general. He has a different path from ours, and we won't have many in the future. Intersection. People like Xinhuo are naturally suited to the battlefield and foreign aggression. If he doesn't die, it will definitely become the best sword for the imperial military to expand its territory. Speaking of the empire, a figure with black hair, black clothes and a black sword suddenly appeared in Geraint's mind, with a hint of reminiscence in his tone. Well, he and Biscord must get along very well. I can introduce them to them when I go to the imperial capital. Besides that, the most important thing now is that he is not weak and should be of great help to our dragon-slaying operation. We need him. When it came to slaying the dragon, Geraint's expression became much more serious and his tone was firm, while Argenta's eyes flickered and she looked a little worried. She looked at Geraint with worried eyes. Brother, promise me not to die. Geraint was silent for a long time before slowly speaking. Good. Chapter 59. The hunter triggers a special event. The plot character imparts knowledge. Techniques are being taught. On the deck, Barna was explaining to the two people one by one how to use the war cry skill in simple and easy to understand terms, how to move the throat muscles, the specific application of breath, and most importantly, how to mobilize the inner will and courage. Despite Barna's appearance, he is extremely meticulous and patient in teaching. He must have had more than one coaching experience. Under such meticulous teaching, Su Yu felt that time passed quickly, and from time to time, one or two shocking or childish roars came from the airship. With the help of Paradise, he gradually fell into a state similar to Epiphany. Like a sponge, he was rapidly absorbing the relevant knowledge described by Barna, and various insights passed through his mind one by one. You have learned the skill, battle cry. Roar. A sound wave exploded with Su Yu as the center, and the turbulent air waves began to surge outward, pushing Barna and Lambert nearby several meters away. This. You have learned this. Amidst the sound of clanking chains, Barna looked at Su Yu in the center of the deck with a face full of doubts about life. You know, it took him 3 days to learn this skill from his instructor. This was already considered a natural talent. However, from the beginning of Su Yu's learning to the time he successfully used it, it only took less than 3 hours. Battle Cry, LV1, Active Skill. Skill Effect, emit violent sound waves to cause a knockback effect within a 20-meter radius, and increase the attack power by 5%. Enemies within the affected range will undergo a double-layer judgment of physical strength and willpower. If the judgment fails, there is a 10% chance of falling into negative states such as dizziness and cowardice. Tips: each time you use the battle cry, you will consume a certain amount of physical strength, and the cooling time is 300 seconds. Because the hunter masters the battle cry through self-learning, it can be used continuously forcibly, and forced continuous use will cause a certain degree of damage to the throat. The battle cry skill has high physical requirements, and it is not only physical strength, but also involves the use of mental will. Otherwise, a simple roar cannot achieve such an exaggerated effect. This skill has a very good control effect and can be used very well. Make up for Su Yu's combat shortcomings. The effect is very good, thank you very much. Su Yu thanked Barna. His voice was a little hoarse, and the pressure on his throat was extremely high when using the battle cry skill. You should be a warrior. Barna looked at Su Yu with a complex expression. Not only was he a fast learner, but in Su Yu's war cry just now, he felt a domineering spirit that swallowed up mountains and rivers and looked down upon all things. This will is the key. The effect of each person's battle cry is different. This is based on his character and will. Now that you have started, you can only rely on yourself for the rest of your improvement. I won't say much about the rest, otherwise it will affect your path. Thank you so much. It's okay, just a normal transaction. Barna waved his hand casually, then seemed to remember something again, and said. Okay, you go back to the cabin to rest first. Remember, when you first learn, the throat is still very fragile. It is best not to use more than 5 times a day. After the throat adapts to such pressure, there will be no so many restrictions. After saying that, he slapped Lambert, who was a little dazed next to him, on the back of the head and staggered him. Until now, Lambert's war cry is just a dry howl. His muscles are strong and he is eager to learn, but it is difficult to mobilize his spiritual energy. Although Lambert's learning speed is no longer slow, compared with Suyu at this moment, it is simply without contrast, there is no harm. You're still dumbfounded. Hurry up and practice. Look, I used to boast that I was a quick learner, but now I'm blushing. Lambert didn't reply, but looked at Suyu with some resentment in his eyes. When he met Lambert's gaze, Suyu shrugged, returned a helpless look, and walked towards the cabin. He was going to talk to Geraint about the Black Dragon again, and maybe he could dig out some more secrets of the Dragon Gem. Just walk to the cabin door. Suyu's movement to open the door suddenly paused, and a paradise prompt sounded in his ears. Warning, the abnormal violator has entered the 1 kilometer range of the hunter, and the hunting function is turned on. The prompt sounded, and Suyu reacted quickly. The airship was surrounded by nothing in the air. The only place where the violator could return was under the airship. He quickly ran to the edge of the deck and looked down. Below was a stretch of land. Endless forest. Suyu ran quite a bit, and the sound of running also attracted Barna's attention. He walked closer in a few steps and asked. Xinhuo, what's wrong? Barna, where is this forest below? The outer forest of the Holy Paradise. Here is the Holy Paradise not far ahead. As he spoke, Barna raised his gaze downwards and pointed directly in front of the spaceship. There was a magnificent group of white buildings on the top of the mountain. That was the capital of the Empire and the Sacred Paradise. Barna, can you drive the spaceship to the forest below? Well, this won't work. This forest belongs to the outer barrier of the Imperial capital. If the airship were to land here, the target would be too big and it would trigger a warning from the Empire. Then can you please use the anchor to send me down? I need to go down to deal with a problem. This is no problem, do you need help? Barna is not too worried about Suyu's safety. After playing a game before, he understands Suyu's strength. What he is more concerned about now is that Suyu still owes him a piece of equipment and cannot run away. No, you go to the holy heaven first, take this, I will come find you later, don't worry. Suyu turned his hand and took out a fire glass bead from the space and threw it to Barna. It was the same bead as Laura in the previous world. After using it once, he found that this thing was quite practical and a great locator. He prepared a few of them in advance before entering the world, and now Kairos and Bunir each have one. As for Barna's offer of help, Suyu was heartbroken for a moment but still refused. He and Barna realized that it had only been a few hours and the relationship was not strong enough to trouble them to kill someone together. Even if you successfully surround and kill the violators below, it will most likely arouse the resentment of the protagonist group, and the gains outweigh the losses. Besides, he currently doesn't know the image of the violator below. If the violator below is a priest with a righteous face and wielding the holy light, or a delicate little girl, he doesn't think the protagonist group will be very determined. Be on his side. Such a situation is not impossible. The violator does not become a violator because of his evil power. Paradise does not care about the good and evil of the contractor. The only reason why they became violators is that they violated the rules of the park, violated the interests of the park, and ignored the warnings of the park, and these have nothing to do with good or evil. This thing is quite beautiful. Barna looked at the beautiful glass ball in his hand. There was a coquettish purple flame floating in the middle of the clear and transparent glass, and the flame was emitting a little glow as it swayed. After carefully putting away the glass ball, which could be worth a lot of money just for its appearance, Barna took Suyu and walked towards the anchor. Xianya boy, you practice honestly, Xinhuo, let's go, I will send you down, will you land in this direction? No, we still need to move a little further back. Chapter 60. On the outskirts of the Holy Paradise, this dense forest is now much more lively than before. Saber, how far is the valley you mentioned? In the dense forest, a group of 3 people were advancing hard, blocked by dense vegetation. The leader was a middle-aged man in camouflage uniforms. He was holding a thick and curved gurg saber, which is what we commonly call a dog. The leg knife is opening the way ahead. As he waved his arms, several rays of cold light flashed, and the dense vegetation in front of him turned into debris. His thick combat boots stepped on the broken plant branches on the ground, making a rustling sound. Hearing the complaints of his teammates behind him, he kept moving his hands. Replied lightly. It's almost there, there are still about 10 minutes left. You're so quick. This is the third time I've heard it. How did you find this crappy place? When they heard that there were still 10 minutes left, a tall and thin man behind them complained again. After entering this dense forest, it would take them almost 2 hours just to travel, and the road was still poor. He was moving as fast as a turtle crawling while opening a road, which made him, who was already impatient, even more irritable. The saber opening the way ahead was as calm as ever, and the frequency of the cold light flashing in front of him remained unchanged at all, as precise as a machine. 2 days ago, we discovered through drones that there are 2 large and 3 small ones in the valley, a total of 5 bear monsters. Their strength is within our hunting range, the risk is medium, and the harvest is enough for us to share. Saber's serious tone came from the front, and the tall and thin man secretly rolled his eyes. Saber is good at everything, but with this personality, he is as rigid as a robot. This was not the first time the 3 of them had cooperated in hunting, but every time he listened to this guy's cold and calm tone, it made him feel a little uncomfortable. Just as he was about to say a few more words, the teammate next to him interrupted him. Lanjian, please stop talking. Instead of talking nonsense, it's better to save more energy. Bear monsters are difficult to deal with. They have high attack and high HP, so hunting is not easy. The tall and lanky contractor codenamed Lanjian lost interest in complaining when he heard the teammates next to him speaking. However, after his eyes glanced at the staff in the hands of his teammates, he immediately paid attention again. Shuang Han, aren't you a master? You can just set fire to clear the way. It's efficient and fast, and you don't have to work hard to open the way with a saber. The teammates wearing robes and holding staffs beside him were stunned after hearing this, and then replied angrily. I'm just a little mage, but I can't bear the title of master. Besides, I'm an ice mage, so I'm just trying to make a fool of myself. Besides, you're tired of setting fire to a place like this, aren't you? Tisk. Shouldn't fireball be the standard equipment for your mages? You. Before Lang Yan could finish his words, a cold light suddenly passed in front of him, and the silver blade almost grazed his eyelashes, making his hair stand up in fear. Duo. A soft sound came from behind, and the frightened Lang Yan turned around to look. The tactical dagger that had just passed by his eyes was firmly inserted into a tree trunk behind him, with a small emerald green snake nailed on the tip. The snake was not dead yet and was twisting wildly on the dagger. A stream of dark green venom spurted out from the snout of the little snake, corroding the blade with a squeaking sound, which made Lang Yan feel chilled in his heart. Duo. Another dagger flew in, and this time it directly nailed the little snake's twisting head to death. The snake's body twitched for a while and then stopped moving. Don't be distracted. There are many trees in this place, and there are naturally a lot of snakes, scorpions, and poisonous insects. What came from the front was still the same calm tone, but the irritability in Lang Yan's heart had been completely driven away by the chill that had just surged up, so he didn't complain anymore. Shuang Han on the side looked at his calm appearance, the corners of his lips were slightly raised, but he said no more words. In silence, the 3 of them continued to move forward at a neither fast nor slow speed. 10 minutes later, the saber chopped the vegetation in front of them, and the front suddenly became clear. A valley with beautiful environment appeared in front of everyone. The terrain was flat, full of green grass, and there was a small blue lake not far away. This place has a nice environment, Saber, where exactly are those monsters? In a cave on the west side of the valley, this valley is not small. We are now in the south. Let's go. At this time, there should be only one adult bear in the cave. Let's solve this part first. Saber took the lead and stepped into the valley. After sizing up the landscape, he walked straight in one direction, with Lanjian and Shuanghan quietly following behind. The valley has a beautiful environment, but it is eerily quiet. It seems that apart from the plants, there is no life in the valley. In the dead silence, only the footsteps of the 3 of them echo in the valley. The deathly silence around him made Shuanghan, who had the highest intelligence attribute in the team, a little uneasy. He couldn't help but softly said. Saber, was it this quiet here last time you came here? Before Saber could say anything, Lang Yan beside him said nonchalantly. It's a magical beast territory. All animals within the area will be expelled. It will probably be lively by the time we get to the entrance of the cave. Shuanghan didn't even look at the wolf smoke coming from the side. He still stared at the saber leading the way. After the saber glanced around, he frowned slightly. There is indeed something wrong. The last time I used a drone to investigate, although the valley was not very lively, it was not so dead either. Please be more alert. Then why not use the drone to investigate again? We are heading there. Saber shook his head slowly. The drones that can be used in this magical world must at least be of green quality. The last one was smashed to pieces by a bear's paw when exploring the cave. Nothing, let's go to the cave and observe first. If anything goes wrong, we'll retreat. Good. After getting the reply from Saber, Shuanghan didn't insist anymore. Although he felt more and more uneasy, he had to travel for so long to reach his destination. In the end, he returned dejectedly just because of the slightest uneasiness. He probably wouldn't be willing to do this. You just think too much and are suspicious. We have walked back and forth in this forest so many times these days, and we are still safe and sound. In this paradise, you have to dare to fight and kill in order to be prosperous. Seeing Shuanghan still looking worried, Lang Yan couldn't help but try to persuade him, but his tone was quite unworthy of punishment. Jingsheng, we're here. Saber's command came from the front row, and Lang Yan shut up obediently. He turned his head and looked forward. A huge deep cave appeared in front of the three of them. The interior of the cave was so dark that it was hard to see clearly, but a strong smell of blood kept coming from the cave, making it look like a devil's cave. As the distance to the cave got closer, the smell of blood became stronger, and the saber at the forefront suddenly stopped. Something's wrong, there seems to be some noise. Saber's ears moved slightly, and the faint voice in his ears gradually became clearer. Click, click, click. It was a fine chewing sound, similar to using a meat grinder to grind human bones. In short, it was not like the chewing sound that living creatures can make. Retreat! Saber gave a low shout, and while retreating, he took out a rocket launcher from the space. With the flash of fire, a rocket fired into the cave. The three of them retreated and dispersed, staring in the direction of the cave. After hearing a muffled sound in the cave, a spark flashed, and then silence returned, as if what was thrown in was a firecracker instead of a firecracker. Rocket launcher! Ha 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 ha, not bad, not bad. A gloomy and terrifying sound came from the cave, and two narrow white lights suddenly opened inside the dark cave entrance. Before I was full, another takeaway came to my door. It was really considerate, haha. Before he finished speaking, the air screamed in the valley. Saber's pupils shrank sharply and he jumped back. As soon as his feet left the ground, violent smoke and dust exploded in front of the saber. The saber jumped several meters and looked up. When the smoke and dust cleared, a strange-looking handleless sharp blade was suddenly stuck on the ground. It penetrated deep into the ground like a javelin. The saber turned to look at the positions of the other two teammates. Shuanghan blocked the flying blade with an ice shield, but his body was knocked far away. After landing, the shield collapsed, and a large mouthful of blood spurted out from his mouth. As for Wolf Smoke, his entire abdomen had been penetrated by the sharp blade, and the blade was stuck on the ground. The Wolf Smoke hung on the sharp blade and he had lost the ability to resist. Bloody foam kept overflowing from the corners of his mouth. With just one blow, he fell into a state of near death. He used his last strength to tilt his head to look at the saber behind him, his eyes full of begging. Saber gritted his teeth and was about to step forward to rescue him when a large wave of air suddenly opened in front of him, and a huge black figure appeared in front of Lang Yan. The figure's big mouth suddenly opened, and white sharp teeth intertwined down. Pfft! Rich blood bloomed in front of the saber, and a headless human-shaped fountain appeared in front of the figure. A large amount of blood spilled, filling the entire valley with a fishy smell. The sound of crunching and chewing sounded again, but this time it was very close. A conspicuous swelling appeared on the figure's throat, then slid down to the chest and abdomen and disappeared. Symbiote! Saber looked at the black monster in front of him coldly. The symbiote swallowed the food in its mouth, stretched out its long and slender tongue, and licked clean the blood spattered on its cheeks and neck, and opened its terrifying mouth. The white narrow eyes looked at the saber, with a look of endless aftertaste. Really delicious.